being recorded on October 30, 2025. We are streaming at twitch.tv/socialism S4A, and I'm joined in the chat by 96 viewers. Welcome to everybody. I know that there's a lot of first-timers. People ask a lot, when do you stream? Are you still doing the streams? So for a while, I was doing like 1 or 2 streams a week. We started these on the second anniversary of the channel in February 2022. So it was like 3.5 years ago. And for the first couple of years, streaming pretty much every week, sometimes twice a week. And that was really helpful, actually, in accelerating my learning process and just forcing me to get better at doing this. So if there's anything I feel like in general in life you want to get better at, challenge yourself. And being part of groups can definitely help that in the right balance and proportion to your solo work. But I did make a point this time to announce the stream well in advance a week ago, both on the Patreon and also in the YouTube post section. I was going to call it, what did they used to call it? The community section. They don't call it that anymore. Now it's posts. I wish YouTube would just make up their mind. For example, they used to have a nice tab for channels called the Channels tab, where you could easily link to other channels that you wanted your listeners to, or viewers to be aware of and to promote. There's no way to do that now except putting it on your home tab, and it's just a lot harder to find. I don't know why YouTube decided it was in their interest to make it harder for channels to recommend other channels, but that's the state of things. If you scroll all the way down on the home tab, you can find some other channels that I haven't really updated the channels I linked to in a long time, maybe 1 or 2, but I linked to those like 2 or 3 years ago and just kind of set it and forget it. I don't watch a ton of YouTube. People often ask me, hey, have you seen this video? Have you seen this video? Probably the only way that I've seen a video is if somebody else already sent it to me, because when I watch stuff, I tend to watch more like economic news than the kind of stuff that a lot of people who watch this channel listen to, which is like other communist channels. For me, my like studying communism time budget generally goes into the several hours that I spend recording a video. And I've definitely kicked that into high gear this year. I mean, at times we've done more readings. At times we've done more current event videos. I really, really wanted to get the basic Marxism-Leninism playlist done this year, so I buckled down and we finished Volume 1 of Capital, which is on that basic ML playlist. And then also, we're doing Imperialism, Lenin's Imperialism, much shorter book right now. The whole book is shorter than some of the chapters in Capital, so yeah. A lot of people have asked, are we doing Volumes 2 and 3 of Capital? Yes, probably 1 a year. 2 is on the shorter side. 3 is very long. It's more than 50 chapters. So that's probably going to be 2027. And like I said, 1 a year. So Volume 2 next year. But first, what we're going to do is we're finishing up Imperialism. And then there's also an essay that closes out the basic Marxism-Leninism study guide playlist, which is really the backbone of this channel. That's what I started recording on, and that was like the whole intention of this channel for me was I wanted to do more reading. I found that reading list on Our Communism. I was just like, how do you learn Marxism-Leninism? And found that reading list. That sub is not good for a lot of things, but they do have a useful reading list that they put up there that was formulated by the MAI, Movimiento Antiimperialista. So major credit to them. And the last entry on the playlist is an essay about the reconstitution of the Communist Party by MAI, or it's, what is it, Linea Proletaria? Closely allied group, I guess, with MAI. So we'll be reading that to close it out. And that should all be done by the time this live stream is posted, probably either Monday or Tuesday next week, so early November. Just have very little left, actually, just chapters 9 and 10 of Imperialism. And if you're finding Imperialism dry at all, wait till chapter 9. It gets really good. All right. What else was I going to say? Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing since the last live stream. I think we were talking about Bernie Sanders and stuff like that about 4 or 5 months ago, back in June-ish. and pretty much just been plowing through Capital since then. After the basic Marxism-Leninism study guide playlist is done, which, by the way, I will link to in the description. If you're ever looking, in general, when you're listening to the more recent audiobooks, really anything probably from the last year, most of the time, I mean, I do this when I can remember, and I'm trying to make more of a point of it. If I mention videos, like related videos in a video, I will try to link that in the video description, sometimes also in a pinned comment, but definitely look in the video description. And you can get some other side readings in that way. One that I link to a lot is Fascism and Social Revolution from 1935 by Dutt, because it's just so relevant to so many topics. Also, Reform or Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg. And I think that those are some kind of must-reads, in addition to like all the core Lenin and Marx and Engels, whatever other readings. But those are two by non-central authors that you could skip over, but I definitely recommend those to a lot of people because they are just chock full of so many important central ideas and expressed in a clear way. Anyway, I mentioned Patreon like a super long time ago, and I wanted to just thank the patrons. And Buy Me a Coffee supporters, of course. So patreon.com/socialism for all, or buymeacoffee.com/socialism for all. And, you too can get your name on the screen. The colors, as I have since I started this, put a key down at the bottom. The colors are how many years people have been supporting. So as you can see, a lot of long-term support. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate. Well, I can tell you, I appreciate it a lot, so much. This channel just would not be what it is without this kind of support. And so many people have been with me on the long-term journey, like I said, since February 2020. We now have some pink names, which are over 5 years. I didn't even know if I wanted to do a Patreon, and then I put one up because it's, something people do. I was like, all right, why not? And, it wasn't really until about like 2 years later that there was sort of enough in the can to even collect it. But since that time, it's grown to where I can really put a lot of hours into this every week consistently. And really, when I say in the videos, if you like this channel, thank me, but also thank a patron or Buy Me a Coffee supporter and consider becoming one, I mean that, because there have been many weeks where I didn't really feel like doing this, and I did it because of the patrons, because this is just something that I just wanted to keep alive and keep going. And I could see how many people were showing up for it and willing to put something behind it. And that means something to me. So we've kept it going. The channel's now over 42,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we're spreading out on Spotify and Substack. And, I put the videos on Patreon for free as well. Also audio on SoundCloud. So it's, spreading to a lot of different places. And I think it's just, it's growing faster than ever now. So, I think, again, just thank you so much for the support, because as long as you keep supporting, I will keep going. I've got more plans for this, is what I'm trying to get at. And like I was saying, after the basic ML study guide is done, which it, like I said, will be by the time this live stream is edited and posted, I will be finishing out the American Party of Labor playlist. And people ask me, if I endorse a party or something like that. And as I've explained, I really don't, because, if I explicitly endorse a party, then I become kind of responsible for sending people into it. And I've had a couple of near misses with that. Like when we started in 2020, kind of all the rage was PCUSA, which was a splinter group off of CPUSA. And they said that they were like the anti-revisionist group that was going to fix everything with CPUSA. And that didn't happen. It was just like a Nazball group. And, so I held off on that one, and I'm really glad that I did. And then, there have been other groups that have done some okay work at times, but then I later, put some more thought into it and more consideration and thought maybe that isn't so good. I can tell you at this point, while I don't see a party that I think is, clearly the party that has the ties to all of the movements that we need to have and whatever, the party I can tell you that has the best reading list and whose members actually seem to study the way that communists are supposed to do, and you don't get into a situation like CPUSA where you get some good people in the locals, local chapters, but then the national is terrible by like the admission of basically everyone in the organization, and that they just ignore national. And same with PSL, which is Dungus, supportive of socialism with Chinese characteristics. I'll come back to that in a second, which is kind of like the dominant trend in communism today. I believe it's revisionist for reasons that we've already kind of broached the subject on the channel. I plan next year to do a deep, much fuller dive into that topic, really starting in January. But yeah, PSL, I had 2 people in the comments just this week saying, oh, PSL considers China revisionist. And I'm like, do you have a source on that? Because I have never heard that once. And in fact, I've argued at length with PSL members about that. And then one of them got back to me and was like, my bad. That was just my local chapter. Apparently, we just ignore national. And you know what? That's a communist party cannot work like that. You need unity across the organization. And, this is, I think, the major challenge in the communist movement today is to fight off the kind of market socialist Dungist revisionism, which has taken China where it is, also helped to collapse the USSR, that kind of liberalization in the 80s, which, as I have read, was partly inspired by China and, helped to bring the USSR down. So I think that after that has been cleared away, the movement can move forward again. But like I said, as far as parties, not an explicit endorsement, because I don't know all of what's going on in the party, but best reading list and members actually seem to study is APL, American Party of Labor. So, check it out, see what you think. My focus right now, and we've thanked the patrons, I think, enough at this point. I'll go back to the other screen. My focus on this channel right now, and I really did want to mention this, address this directly, is, when I started the channel, like I said, I just wanted to read. And, we started with that basic playlist, which, again, is almost complete. Then we'll be moving on to the APL playlist, because I think that that's probably a very good, like, intermediate reading list after you're done with the basic stuff. And I'll probably do like an amalgamation of those playlists when it's all done, with some other picks of my own in there. Like I said, Reform or Revolution probably in there. But when I started the channel, it was like I just wanted to read, and it grew and grew by thousands. And I did some venting about politics that was going on at the time and the start of the pandemic and Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary and all kinds of stuff. The BLM protests. There's a lot going on in 2020. It kept growing and it kept growing. And I've been kind of on this tightrope of trying to talk to communists and then also trying to talk to a general left-wing audience. And you know what? Those aren't the same things, because the conversations that you want to have with communists, the rest of the left absolutely cannot keep up with them. They have not done the study. They don't understand it. Even a lot of self-styled communists can't keep up with it, or they just haven't done the study and are therefore just behind and wrong, but loud and participating anyway. And actually, the rest of the left will do that too. They'll tell you their opinion, even though it's not valid, it's not informed by study. But trying to do that publicly, especially at this point, and this is what's kind of forced this question on me, is this year, going from like 30,000, 40,000 subscribers. When I put a current events video up now, it gets 20,000 views. And believe me, those are not all communists. So, I have to take a very kind of introductory and let me help you catch up tone in that. And, then the comments are just debilitating, reading the stuff that people are writing in the comments a lot of the time. A lot of it will just be communists who are like, salute and like, yeah, good video, I get it, whatever. But then you get these socdems or, sort of people maybe curious about moving beyond social democracy, writing just novels in the YouTube comments. It's crazy. I'm like, I often write back to these people like, do you expect me to read this? Like, I'm not trying to be rude, but you wrote like 5,000 words. Do you really expect me to read this in a YouTube comment? I mean, is that realistic? There's just no possible way I can respond to that. And what I started realizing this is a symptom of, or, what's causing this is the lack of a party, because a party has a whole apparatus of people who go into their community and can help share the message and spread the message and do the education in a language that people understand. They can meet people where they're at. When I'm trying to talk to like 40,000 people are all different places, in that. So trying to make videos that meet all of those tens of thousands of people where they're at, it's just not practical. So if I have to pick one thing, I would say that the purpose of this channel that I'll be focusing on, especially as now I myself am getting a lot more advanced in my understanding and my reading after more than 5 years of this, working steadily at it, is the purpose of this channel is to make more communists. And if we do anything else, it's really secondary. So, I may change the slogan of the channel to something like that. And, doing the current events videos, I'm sure I'll still do them. But what we need a party. I mean, the reason, because a party should be doing this kind of education. And a party also has the staff, the people to handle the hundreds of questions and, actually speak to the tens of thousands of people and find a tone. I'm one person. I just can't do that. And, now that the channel is this size, so I have to make decisions based on that. And it's just something that, I don't regret it at all. It's just something I didn't have to deal with before, but now I'm conscious. Like, this is something I really have to figure out, because if I just put communist stuff out there, it's going to go over a lot of people's heads. I've been seeing that. And it's also, you could even say in the video, I put a whole bunch of videos linked for you if you want to like understand where we're coming from, whether we're talking about electoralism or, DSA or whatever it is, talking about these topics, which are complicated. I want you to do some background reading, and then maybe you'll get more of what I'm saying if you've never done any study before. And a lot of people just don't read it. Like, they'll be asking in the comments, like, where can I get the reading? Like, first of all, on any YouTube video, the video description is a great place to check. But beyond that, I said it in the video that I put it in the fucking video description. So help me out here. There's a lot of people watching these videos now. Please, don't waste my time. And I don't mean that in a kind of like self-centered way. I mean, I just have really limited time and I'm really trying to help people. Please don't, please try to help yourself as much as you can, then ask the question. But yeah, that's, I think, where the channel is headed, is just trying to make more communists, because helping people do the study, that's why I've been doing these reading lists, is to help people join whatever group it is. And then that group can take over more of this work, and they'll have, dozens or hundreds of people that can do more of that outreach work. And people really do need to be both online and in their community, answering questions and explaining things as you're doing whatever kind of, organizing and rallying work that you're doing. I will say, before we go into the chat, I'm sure people are posting stuff. I'm sure we'll do a lot of chat. I also have some things that I brought, some videos and some articles and stuff like that. We'll see what we get into today. I think we'll leave it there for right now. I want to catch up with the chat. 133 people here. Awesome. Let me scroll up here and catch up with the chat. so that we're on the same page. I got to say, it's weird for me that the channel is so big. Because you listen to the old stuff, stuff from 2020, 2021, there was like a few thousand, 4 or 5,000 people. And I was just kind of ranting, I mean, like, it wasn't very polished is what I'm trying to say. I would just get on the mic because, like, I just read news I didn't like, and I just started screaming about it. And, and I hadn't done, I mean, I had done some study at that point, but not nearly as much as I've done now. And, I definitely try to take a more polished approach to the channel while still just kind of like keeping the same style to it, I guess. But it's weird. And I think it's now when I record, I definitely do have it. There's a lot of people listening that when I got into this just weren't listening. It's definitely been I'd say it's still an ongoing adjustment for me. Anyway, I see people talking about Platner. Yeah, before I read any of these comments, let me just say some of the things that I did set aside for discussion. If people want to start bringing things up about this now so that we can weave it in, that's good for me. The SNAP benefits thing. So the government shutdown, the Republicans are illegally avoiding measures to, like, there's like a reserve fund that they're supposed to use. SNAP is supplemental nutrition. It's basically like food stamps. So it's like there's like 20% of the country depends on these to eat, and they are deliberately starving people. So first of all, if you're in that situation right now, there is a website, findhelp.org. Findhelp.org. Put in your zip code, and you can find programs in your area. Now, some of them, might be old info. There might be a disconnected number or something like that. You really got to pick up the phone and call to ask around for help. Call them up, say, I need help. But there's all kinds of stuff, help with food, help with housing, whether it's food banks or whatever. It's probably going to be listed on there. So findhelp.org, put in your zip code, and then, call places up or go there in person. And if they can't help you, don't just get, disappointed and walk away. These are people who work in the field of helping people, and they're familiar usually with lots of other organizations in the county and in the state that you're in, and ask them, well, I need XYZ. Do you know of some other organization or group that could help me? And, be a little, I mean, be polite, but, don't take no for an answer. In other words, like if you, you're going looking for a job. If one job turns you down, you don't just give up. Like you got to keep looking. And it's, they make it too hard. I mean, this country in general makes it too hard, but there are organizations out there that do give out, help for free. If you need food, if you need whatever it is, like help paying rent, there is some money out there. You'd be surprised sometimes. A lot of it doesn't come through the federal government. It comes through state and local. So again, findhelp.org, put in your zip code. Hopefully that, will help get people through right now until funding is restored, which again is being cut illegally. Democrats did put in a standalone bill to get that going, and the Republicans shot it down. Anyway, so as far as I know, that goes into effect November 1st, and it's going to affect a lot of people. Maybe there will be some last minute thing about it. I don't know. But again, a huge amount of people and children depend on that program and will be going without food without it. So if you don't need help and you are in a position where you have something extra to give, contact the local, you go to findhelp.org also and ask them, how do I contribute? Food banks are going to be needing more food than usual. A lot of supermarkets have donation programs, do those too. So this is a time where we do need to focus on that. All right. Also, what else did I pull for today? I took a look at, apparently Charlie Kirk wrote a book pretty recently. I couldn't find the most recent book, but I did get his 2020 book, I think it was, the MAGA Doctrine or something like that. I wanted to read the preface to it because just to get a look at the terrible kind of the messaging that they're putting out for people to swallow, which is just isn't backed up by anything. We'll do a little exercise in critical thinking if we read the Charlie Kirk thing. Also, I did just do a Hasan Piker reaction recently. I don't do a ton of reacts anymore. It was kind of burning me out. However, when I did that video, I just hit a point in the react where I was like, you know what? I did enough. I turned it off, and it didn't burn me out, and actually got a lot of new subscribers off of that video. So if it's going to get more people becoming communists, I'm for, kind of doing it as advertising, I guess. But there was another video that I was considering sharing on the stream where Hasan goes on a lengthy, persuasion piece trying to convince his audience that there's no, quote, conspiracy against the left. Hello? Have you heard of COINTELPRO? I mean, and his whole argument is like, there is no left. Why would there need to be a conspiracy against it? Bro, that's part of why there isn't a left. Are you kidding me? Read about the Black Panthers. What happened to them? What did the state do to them? Was there a, quote, conspiracy against them? Of course the capitalists use all the police agencies, known and unknown, open and secret, to suppress the left. Are you kidding me? Why did they have 2 Red Scares if there's no conspiracy against the left? In light of the Graham Platner comments, I think it's time for us to get a lot more critical about people claiming to, quote, represent the left and, putting stuff out there like, oh, the government isn't suppressing the left. Are you joking? Like, I was shocked when I heard that. That goes beyond, to me, just being uninformed. That seemed to me like deliberate misinformation. I don't know how you could possibly go out there and be like, oh yeah, the government's just cool with leftism. We just keep losing. What? No. So that raised a lot of red flags for me. Let me put it that way. And if we play the video, we'll see if it raises red flags for you too. If we happen not to get to that, you can look it up yourself. The title of it is "Chat Finally Breaks Hasanabi During 30 Minutes Stun Lock on Graham Platner." And it's, 40-minute video or something like that. Also wanted to talk about the economic situation. There have been a number of subprime lenders collapsing. Get used to the term NDFI, non-depository financial institutions, which is the formal, nice-sounding euphemism name for shadow banks, the private credit market. There's all kinds of off-balance sheet stuff going on that there are contagion risks in the mainstream major banks. Some of these things have been going down. Some of the names are Tricolor, Primal End. This is all like in the last week or two. There's been some other smaller lenders going down, but it's kind of this canary in the coal mine leading Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan to make the observation that, if you see one cockroach, you can be sure that there are others there because they're just never alone. And that's kind of the thing going on here. If one of these things goes down, and, likening them to cockroaches is pretty appropriate, you can be sure that there's more going on there. And this has been just... So the liquidity has been drying up is the short version. It's harder to get cash. So people, firms that have been relying on easy to get cash over the last few years, there's been a lot of free money just flying around in the system, which is, if you've been listening to this channel for a while, we've been talking about the looming recession for like 2 years now. I mean, the writing's been on the wall clearly for a massive crash for like 2 years, and it just hasn't shown up yet. The reason for that, the corporations had record profits during the pandemic. They were sitting on hordes of cash, which they were able to spend down a lot of those treasure hoards that they were sitting on. And that's how they avoided firing people. However, now you see the layoffs really starting to heat up. Amazon laying off like 14,000 people this week. And it's just kind of you're starting to see big layoffs going on. And they're saying it's AI, but it's really not AI. I mean, they're definitely hoping AI can pick up the slack, but this is a recession. They're laying off people because everything's drying up. And so all that easy money that was flying around in the pandemic, that if you look at something like the repo market, the liquidity is just drying up. And, some entities are going to be able to ride that out. better than others, you're going to start seeing a lot of these things go under. And at some point, if there is a contagion risk, that's going to catch and something big is going to crash. And connected to that is the AI bubble. Almost every major channel at this point, economic finance channel, has done at least one video about the AI bubble. There was a particularly good one, I thought, by Adam Conover. Another guy I watch sometimes, more of a right winger, I guess, is Sean Fu, FOO, who, disregard the precious metals ads in the middle of the video. But he does a lot of stuff on the trade war and US-China stuff. And he's not like a multipolarity guy or a, Eurasian research guy or anything like that. But I think does fairly even-handed coverage of the trade war. Anyway, he had a good one on the AI bubble recently, where it's coming out that these big AI companies, particularly NVIDIA, a lot of the apparent income of these companies associated with the AI industry, quote unquote, it's like NVIDIA lending them money so that they can buy NVIDIA's chips. So there's kind of like a big IOU for them to buy NVIDIA's chips and keep the whole train going a little bit longer. But the reality is 95% of businesses using AI have not found profitable use for it. Now, 5% have, but this is not the game-changing, in terms of profitability and business application, this is not the game-changing situation that people were dumping trillions of dollars into AI on. I mean, OpenAI has a plan to be profitable like years from now, and it's actually fairly unrealistic. I don't even think that they can hit their stated targets. So you're looking at all of the, just billions and billions and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions being dumped into an industry on the promise that it's going to be the biggest thing ever and it's going to be, game changing. And everybody's had this big FOMO, fear of missing out, that if AI takes off, they want to be in on the ground level. But it looks more and more like the AI industry is just leading these investors around by the nose, taking money, and never delivering anything, really. Like I said, I mentioned a couple of videos there, but the AI bubble, that could really be affecting the stock market when that goes. Stock market very overvalued at this point if you look at the profit to earning ratio. And so that is on track. It's taken longer than usual, like I said, because corporations were sitting on cash and they've been able to avoid layoffs. We're finally, in fact, I didn't know if we're going to make it to the stream today before that news was going to, blow, that there was going to be another like Lehman Brothers moment from 2008. I didn't know if we were going to make it to the stream or not before some major company announced some catastrophic news or not. But we're here, we're talking about it, and I'm telling you, look up the AI bubble. So between the stocks and the bonds with the shadow lending, there's such major weakness. We're looking at, the thing I've been talking about for 2 years has not gone away. So, all right. That's pretty much, like I said, I have some supplemental materials on some of that stuff. If you want to get into it, let me know. Otherwise, let me go through the chat, which I've been talking about for like half an hour now. The tattoo should have ended Platner's career. That whole situation is so fucked up. I don't even know. Actually, Francesca Fiorentini, I think is her name, just got race. She was like, what do you call it? Main character of the day on Blue Sky yesterday. Finally deleted her post, so good on her for doing that. But definitely was standing up for Platner in just, I think it's pretty clear at this point, most of the left has just said, like, look, Nazi tattoos are disqualifying, find somebody else, even if you want to go that route of like expanding the squad. Reminder, by the way, it's been 10 years since Bernie Sanders announced that they're going to totally transform the Democratic Party. How's that going? You got a half a dozen people in the squad. It's not going at all. Now, obviously, Mamdani's, running in this election now for New York City mayor. That could be big. And I mean, he's like way ahead in the polls. So, but when he gets in and things don't necessarily turn out that differently, it's going to be, people are always saying like, oh, the class consciousness, it's so good for raising people's class consciousness. At most, it's like that little section in left-wing communism when Lenin's like talking to the British communists and saying, all right, look, it's 1920. You don't have a party yet. You're forming a party. That's good. In the meantime, like these terrible socdems who are just reactionaries, they're like no different from reactionaries. They're running, and a lot of people still have like false hope in them. You know, while you're forming your party, vote for them. And because your people haven't had an experience with how terrible these people are yet. Now, I would argue that at this point, everybody knows that. I mean, it's 100 years later. We've seen a lot of social democrats come and go. They sell people out. You know, who has betrayed us? Social democrats. It rhymes in the original German. We've already seen that, but, you know, even within a lot of people's lifetime now. But, I mean, if people really want to go that route, I don't know that it's going to hurt anything, but except possibly of just lowering people's standards of like, here is socialism, and you know, or just people getting like wrong ideas about how high we can aim and what the methods are. So I do think there's risk of disorienting people to the struggle through a Mamdani or something like that. On the other hand, I mean, yeah, you can agitate off of like, you know, we elected him and he wasn't able to do anything, or he just totally betrayed people, like consciously, seemingly. Or obviously, you know, consciously, purposely betrayed people. I mean, yeah, the thing is, we've already been agitating off of that with Bernie and with AOC for years. And I mean, and with the Democratic Party as a whole, we've been agitating off of that for like a really long time. I'm not sure that that's a lesson that really still needs to be taught, and that we should be adopting a further left position and just stick to it. Just stick to it. You know, that's what I did on the channel. Obviously, I'm not running for office, but it's like, I'm a communist. My intention is just to stick to that and not get pulled right, you know? Like, no, this is communism, and I'm not going to abandon that position. And so many people just seem, whether it's for the promise of, you know, winning an election or reaching a larger audience or whatever it is, of just kind of creeping right. That's opportunism. That's how it works. You're letting bourgeois respectability move you right. That's how it works, okay? You don't want to do that. All right, continuing. The Marxist Internet Archive has study guides for reading Marx and Engels. Are there good guides for Lenin, Stalin, or Mao? Want to implement for a reading group? I don't know. That's something I would consider doing in the future. Somebody asked me about like a test. You know, can I give people tests? At this point, I'm really just focusing on the long form reading. There's no substitute for that. There's other channels out there I don't necessarily think that highly of that are doing summary videos. I would highly recommend, if you have the half an hour to listen to a summary video, just make the 4 hours and listen to the whole thing, you know? Like take a car ride, or on the bus, or on a bike, or when you're walking, or, you know, downtime at work if they let you listen to stuff. Just listen to the whole thing. It's so much better. And that way you're not trusting some middleman to like summarize it for you. You know, real communists just do the reading. That's what I would say. And there's really no substitute for that. You want to get, you know, Lenin writes in a particular voice. Marx writes in a much more difficult voice. Just sentences are hugely complex. Stalin also writes in a particular voice. You know, just listen to the original author. And it's so easy for people to take quotes out of context also, which I was experiencing in the comments on that left-wing communism video, the Hasan reaction video. Somebody was trying to take it out of context, the thing I was just citing about how Lenin was like, look, elect these guys just to show how terrible they are. And somebody was taking part of that quote out of context to just say, just vote for these guys because that's all we can do. And it's like, that's definitely not what Lenin was saying at all. So, yeah, anyway. Hasan has now joined the chorus that deflect their critics by stating we have a, quote, purity fetish. And yeah, this is what opportunists say. They start talking about purity fetishism. No, that's opportunism. Another type of crap that they use to try to justify their right opportunism and revisionism. Well, the more people read, and that's what I said in the Hasan video, just read it for yourself. The more you study, the less you will be able, or the less they can manipulate you. The more you will know what the actual position is, you know? I think it would be useful for S4A to cover about the hour or so when Hasan finally makes his argument. A lot of people in chat were accurately critiquing him. To his credit, he did read their comments, but the answers and his final verdict were very telling. Yeah, I'm not sure I have much more time for Hasan. I said after the first Hasan video, I just think this guy isn't that smart, honestly. Like, I was just listening to him for a while. He did not strike me as the most intelligent person. I'm not trying to just like be mean. I'm just saying, like, for one of the most influential streamers out there, I did not think that he could really was on a level appropriate to that much attention, I guess. That's not to say that people can't have a role, at different levels, but I was just not that impressed listening. I do not listen to him regularly, but what I have heard, I did not think he really came off as particularly knowledgeable or intelligent. So, is he at least on an average level? Yes, but I didn't think for the exceptional amount of attention he's getting, I did not think he had exceptional knowledge or ability. That was my take. I think I did a reaction like 4 years ago to him, and this was the most recent one was the second one, and just guy does not impress me. And again, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to like make this a chest beating thing. I'm just like, is this really what passes for like the most influential streamer out there? Because I don't get it. But I guess he just streams all the time, so you can build an audience that way. Been listening to Imperialism as the videos come out. Been so excited for that one. Yeah, let me say to people about imperialism. Like I said, chapter 9 is kind of where all the action is, where the rubber meets the road. In the previous 8 chapters, Lenin is really kind of laying out the basics, very dry stuff about imperialism. My general note about the topic of imperialism, don't overthink it. A lot of people in trying to say that Russia or China isn't imperialist or doesn't have imperialist traits, they end up looking like that Big Bang Theory meme of the guy with the conspiracy chart on the wall. Lenin's concept of imperialism, it's just not that complex, Imperialism is when capitalism outgrows free competition, becomes monopoly capitalism, and it has particular traits, like maybe it's income, a country's income from investments outpaces like actual trade, things like that. But it's not that complicated. I mean, it's not terribly difficult to understand. And if you find yourself, jumping through hoops to try to do this or that, it is an imperialist. Like, question, are you overthinking this, or are you trying to do mental gymnastics to try to justify something that isn't really supportable? That would be my main note on imperialism. Don't overthink it. And another much shorter take on that. I mean, in Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism, Lenin really breaks it down. There's another shorter version called Imperialism and the Split in Socialism. That's a much shorter article. It's not a book, that covers a lot of the same ground. And, like I said, it's just not that complicated of a topic. Have I considered going onto the Deprogram? I've never been invited on the Deprogram, hence I cannot go onto it. Yeah. But I don't do a lot of collaborations anyway. Channel's been growing without them. And there's a lot of collaborations that have been, I don't know, difficult. that didn't for me, just sitting down, doing the recording, or just getting an idea and just cranking out a video, that has the most impact to me. Collaborations tend to be a lot of extra work and can just be very complicated. So there's a lot of reasons why I just generally focus on just doing my thing. And, I know that all of you probably listen to lots of other socialist and communist and political and economic channels. You don't really need me to do the crossover thing so much. And like I said, the channel's been growing enough for me. I've actually been struggling to keep up just with there's so many people listening now that I can't, I have to just sort of take that into account when I'm recording. Is like, all right, 20,000 people are going to hear this. Let's make it good. Not that I wasn't trying to make it good before, but I had a much better idea of who I was talking to before in the smaller underground audience. I have no idea who's listening now. And, you just want to, it makes you a little self-conscious, but it's also like, like I said in the beginning, it's easier to meet people where they're at when you actually know the people. That's why we need parties to do more of this work, to be active in their community. But yeah, I don't know a lot of the audience at this point, whereas I did, because there's like 1,500 new people subscribing every month. I have no idea who these people are or what their background is, so I don't even know how to talk to them. I mean, really specifically talk to them. I don't know them. Whereas I used to get to know regular commenters really easily, and I still recognize a lot of old school, like first, second, even third year commenters. I still recognize their name or whatever, but and I kind of remember our interaction history. A lot of the people now, it's just this flood of new people. I have no idea who they are. Hence, I don't know exactly how they want to be spoken to or what their background is, what their existing knowledge is. So it just gets weird the bigger it gets, but I'm just trying to do my thing the best that I can at whatever size that it is. All right, anyway. Been having a hell of a time finding beyond Marx and Engels. Is there a link for... the study guides. Yeah. Fascism and Social Revolution and Fundamentals of Political Economy gave me so much clarity. Yeah, it's so nice finding a reading that just kind of like, boom, like just this light bulb goes off and you make a lot of connections off of it. I love that feeling. Sometimes, not every reading does that. But not every reading does that. But sometimes you just get a reading that's like, changes your whole life, or at least is a turning point in your studies anyway. Hot take, but Platner's tattoo was to commemorate his war crimes, and the fact that he kept that too shows just how much he has quote-unquote reformed or not. Yeah, if you had a fucking Totenkopf on your chest, wouldn't you either get that removed or blacked out or something? But like, it's just none of the explanations of that hold up. And he referred to it as a Totenkopf. Anyway, that whole discussion should be over at this point. This should have been a very, very simple discussion. I think for the most part, it was. Okay, Neo Ivan, I see I maybe had a typo in your name. I'll check it out. The font's getting pretty small. I still do like putting everybody on the same Patreon graphic, though, just to show how many of you there are. I mean, it's there's strength in numbers, as you know. So, yeah, somebody brings up Settlers pretty much every stream. I recently found a copy of Settlers, haven't read it yet, but a lot of folks critique it due to its presenting the argument that there's no white proletariat and they're settler colonial in nature. There's more to it, but don't know the discourse aside from it being bad for solidarity building. It's discussed in Imperialism, the book we're doing right now. Engels and Lenin both commented on the bourgeoisification of the proletariat in imperialist countries, and then the settler colonial aspect adds another dimension to that. I don't know. Am I not a communist? Like, am I not actually trying to contribute to the effort to dismantle capitalism, to educate people? Am I not doing that? Because if I am, the argument that no one is doing it, it's impossible, goes away. The fact that there's been difficulty within the imperial court doing that for reasons discussed by Lenin, I would suggest reading what Lenin had to say about that and how to fix it, according to Lenin. Look back at what the Comintern, when Lenin was alive and just after, had to say about it. I'm national leadership of APL. I can tell you that I'm pretty terrible, but everyone else is very cool. Okay. Straight from the horse's mouth. Holding you to that. When are you going to do the audiobooks continuing Browderism? Yeah, that'll be sometime next year. Like I said, next year, big section on socialism with Chinese characteristics, because I feel like that is the major source of revisionism. I mean, it's the dominant trend in quote-unquote communism today, and it has to be overcome. There will be a lot on that, Capital Volume 2, and then the advanced anti-Browderism stuff. So I think all that stuff is in the first 6 months next year. I tried to join APL and never heard anything back, unfortunately, and that's the case with many groups, unfortunately. But my area is super inactive. Even the local DSA didn't really do anything. Yeah, I have to say, organizations, I don't care if you have 2 or 3 people, you have to. I've said this before. you have to make it your top priority to respond to new membership inquiries, because there's a lot of people who really do want to get involved in something, and it is the most disheartening thing when they don't hear back for 2 or 3 months after, you know, let me put it this way. If you're not replying in the first 2 weeks to somebody's new member inquiry, don't bother, because put yourself in their shoes. If you reach out to a party or other organization and you hear back from them 10 weeks later, would you even bother joining? Obviously, that's a dysfunctional organization. So yeah, you got to respond in like the first week or two. You just have to. It has to be top priority. PSL leadership is Trotskyist. They do not uphold Chinese socialism. The Marxist grift is that they publicly support actually existing socialism but are internally Trots. I don't know. I haven't gotten that close to them to know myself. Speaking of Dungism and revisionism, do you intend to finish the second part of that text, The Late Cultural Revolution? I started recording it, and I felt like it just went into so many like weird little niche Maoist things, like against Vietnam, and I was just like, it got a little off topic from what I was reading it for on the channel, so probably not. I had a meeting with the Communist Workers Platform USA, and they're really good. Yeah, actually, I have always meant to mention them again, CWP USA. They were another splinter group off of PCUSA, like the ACB, American Council of Bolsheviks. Unfortunately, the ACB got sued into oblivion by the PCUSA. The PCUSA took them to federal court for like making them look bad or something, and was seeking hundreds of thousands of dollars, I believe, if I recall correctly. And the ACB had to shut down. Total bullshit, in my opinion. But I believe the CWP USA, Communist Workers Platform, is another offshoot that I've heard good things about, but I don't know that much about. But yeah, I wish I had mentioned them in the video I did back in the spring about parties. So again, the chart that was in that video was from like 2023. I get like several comments every week. What about the RCA or RCI? It didn't exist when the chart was made. It's just amazing. I heard PSL were Trots doing that whole Marxism and Leninism thing. Yeah, if you say that publicly, you'll get a lot of people really angry at you. No, they're Marxist-Leninist, but that is my understanding as well, that they still do the Marxism and Leninism thing. Because the party came off of a split from a Marxist party, which is a variant of U.S. Trotskyism. Yeah, according to a lot of people familiar with it, they don't notice any Trotskyism in it. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure somebody could do a really in-depth analysis of that. I don't even fucking care, because to me the China thing is like the bigger issue. But have I heard of the anime produced by the CPC about Karl Marx called The Leader? No, I actually have not heard about that at all. Regarding this topic, what is your take, or any fellow comrades' take, on engaging in parties that are revisionist? I am in a party not in the US where the youth section where I take part is Marxist-Leninist, but the real party is extremely revisionist, following a united front with Social Democrats line that is tailist and without any real perspective other than one day maybe being the minor partner in a 3 or 4 party coalition. Still, this party is the biggest quote-unquote communist party here and has MLs among its ranks. We don't have that situation in the U.S., so I'm not as familiar with that. Somebody else would probably be better to comment on that than I would be. But as far as engaging in parties that are revisionist, I don't know of a lot of cases of the revisionism being overcome. I know in the U.S., like CPUSA has had this problem for decade after decade after decade, and nothing has ever fixed it. So, my observation is that a lot of times these parties, once they go revisionist, they're just not really getting them back. But maybe other people have more to say on that. I've had multiple meetings with the PSL. They are Marxist-Leninist. They just have many revisionists in their ranks. I don't know. Is there like a PSL reading list or something like that? I've never seen one. I don't even know what they're telling people to study exactly. I've never been able to figure that out. I know they have articles up at Liberation School, but I've seen a real mix of stuff. And somebody else coming back. I have communications with the PSL Executive Committee. They are Trots, sorry to say. What are you saying are signs of their Trotskyism? Because, I mean, people ask a lot of the time. We have a playlist, anti-Trotskyism, and also a playlist on Lenin against Trotsky. The Trotskyists always say, oh, Lenin came to terms with Trotsky and it's fine. Yeah, Lenin did come to terms with Trotsky because Trotsky stopped pushing Trotskyism for a while and he just became a Bolshevik carrying out the Bolshevik line. Then later on, he started, particularly after Lenin died, he started doing Trotskyism again, which Lenin, let me tell you, would not have been okay with. If you go back and read what Lenin had to say about Trotsky's theories when he was pushing them, it was not good. But as far as like, what is Trotskyism? Trotskyism has so many errors. They just come up with it is basically Menshevism in disguise. They come up with weird errors no matter the topic. They will just come up with some weird interpretation of it, which is just never really helpful and is not represented in real world struggles that much. I mean, successful ones. And so they just claim that everything that ever worked, was just always some kind of defective Stalinism and whatever. So, as an anti-revisionist, I take a different point of view that, I mean, if a revolution gets off successfully, there's usually some, anyway, I'm not even going to get into that. We talked about that so much in the beginning of the year. I'm just kind of over it at this point. But people ask, what's the problem with Trotskyism? I would almost be like, what isn't the problem with Trotskyism? They've had weird positions on practically every question. Googling APL. Yeah, don't Google APL. Seems to show everything but the American Party of Labor. It's a very small organization, so you're just not going to find it that way. Just look up the whole name. The quote-unquote Marxist entertainment streamers have lost the plot and created cesspools for audiences. Yeah. This is another thing that keeps me from streaming excessively. I just really don't want people to confuse what I'm doing with that. Like, there's something better you could be doing than listening to me most of the time. Every once in a while, fine. We'll come together for a chat. Most of the time, though, just study or, go out in the world and do something with this. That's what I'd rather see. Disclaimer, I am not from the U.S. I understand that they are, quote, choosing to believe China regarding its whole socialism with Chinese characteristics. Who is they? Are you talking about PSL? Which is likely to just be revisionism. I mean, yeah, I covered that in the Why Not PSL video like a year ago at the last election, which is, I read an article from Brian Becker. He knows it's revisionist. So, I mean, it's not even that they're choosing to believe China. If you read the article, he says flat out that it's like, it has like turned its back on the working class and all this other stuff. Don't quote me on that. Look up the video because I've read the article out. But no, like they recognize it's revisionist, but then they just call it socialism anyway. Don't do that. Anyway, isn't PSL better than the other parties in the U.S. that are outright social democrats? DSA is not a party. DSA is an umbrella group that to me seems like, aside from like a focused communist group, is the sort of, like the Green Party. DSA was founded decades ago, but for a long time it was really, really small. The Green Party for a while, like when I was getting involved in this in the 2000s, the Green Party was bigger because of the Ralph Nader campaign. And so if there was left activity, a lot of times it would be around the Green Party. Now, it does seem like, I think especially under Jill Stein, that has fallen way off. There's a number of reasons for that. Obama drained a lot of progressive energy off, and, David Cobb was not the most inspiring candidate either in the mid-2000s. And then Jill Stein, I really dislike. I think the Green Party could do, even the Green Party could do better than Jill Stein, in my opinion. There are eco-socialists in the Green Party, though, in the left wing, and I definitely do support that. And, am friendly with a number of eco-socialists in the Green Party. But yeah, it seems like DSA is definitely more where the action is at this point as far as general activism. The problem is all the opportunism toward the Democratic Party. from the more the center and right wing of DSA. But there's a lot of people talking about DSA that have no idea what they're talking about, and I see this in the comments. It'll be a sweeping, very dogmatic take on DSA, even if you have criticisms of DSA, which I have. First DSA meeting I went to back in 2016, it was way too lib for me. I mean, way too liberal. And I wasn't even a communist at that point. I was like more of like an ANCOM. And I really didn't like the conversation there. That said, they were, ended up running campaigns on various issues, and some of those were useful. I thought the overall level of class consciousness was pretty low. So yeah, I think the DSA has eclipsed the Green Party and is more sort of multi-purpose. Also, U.S. elections are really not conducive to a left party. This is another thing that came up in the recent Hasan response video, is people like, well, we have to run in the Democrats to win elections. Winning elections is not the point. That's not the point. Organizing is the point. And if you're organizing within the Democratic Party, you don't own your organization. Okay? Now, I know that's going to blow up a lot of people's brains. What do you mean winning elections isn't the point? Well, there's a thing from 1850. If you want to understand the Marxist perspective, 1850, we have it on the channel. Look up Marx on Guns, or Under No Pretext, because it's where the Under No Pretext quote comes from. Marx, 1850, address to the Communist League. And basically what was happening at that time, and you might not appreciate this perspective properly if you haven't done a lot of study in 2025, but once upon a time, capitalism was not set in stone. So the 1848 revolutions, like in Germany, were the capitalists setting up a capitalist government for the first time that didn't exist previously. They were getting rid of the remnants of feudalism and setting up a new capitalist government. What Marx said was fuck that noise, basically. Do your own thing. Set up a parallel, so the capitalists are going to set up their government because there's a power vacuum. Feudalism is collapsing, right? So he's like, what you should do as the Workers' Party is just do your own thing, set up a parallel government, like in Russia, the Soviets, like workers' councils, councils of soldiers and workers and whoever else is in your coalition there, and set up a parallel government that will disregard and sabotage the capitalist government, and then try to outpace them. And if you have a clear shot, and you can gain legitimacy over their embryonic capitalist government, overtake them, and crush their government. So that's a lot easier to do when it's still newborn, But, and while the messaging unfortunately didn't really spread in time, arguably, for Germany, that statement was made in 1850. Russia wasn't at that point until the early 1900s, 50 years later. So they did have time to do all that, because it was the 1905 revolution where the capitalists were really starting to get traction. That parliament was set up for the first time at that point. So the workers were trying to get in on that, and they had their own independent organization, which was very combative towards the capitalists. They would let the capitalists do certain tasks in the struggle, because there's bourgeois democratic tasks and there's, socialist tasks. They would let them do some of it, but they always maintained, and this is, I think, the genius of Lenin applying this, if you read through Lenin's stuff in this time period, was, a lot of the Mensheviks were like, the best we can do right now is let the capitalists set up the government and then try to get elected to the capitalist government. Lenin was like, no, that's not a Marxist position. What we need to do is keep separate from them, set up our parallel organizations, and then when the time is right, we try to overtake them. And that's exactly what they did in 1917. There was a power vacuum because the Tsar was deposed in February of that year. The capitalists started setting up their provisional government that summer, and then in the fall, there was the socialist revolution, and this was all with the backdrop of World War I. So there was a lot of chaos and a lot of change. Now, the problem that we've had, which we may not be having in the relatively, next 2 decades, is it's pretty hard, much easier to take something down when it's still embryonic. before the world is convinced that it's just here to stay, which is unfortunately the case with, like, you know, a lot of the governments of the imperialist countries. People have trouble imagining a world without the French government or the, you know, well, I would say the German government. Germany was split in half for a long time, not so long ago. Or the Belgian government or the Spanish government or whatever. They have a hard time imagining that not existing the way that it is. But as capitalism goes into decay and crisis, I mean, what I saw, I think 2008 was a shot across the bow of what the 21st century is going to be like in the imperialist countries. It was the reemergence of crisis on a scale that, at least the dominant narrative was, that's in the past. Capitalism is stable now. It's the end of history. It's here for all time. 2008 just showed that is not the case at all. There are systemic problems that the, you had 20 banks, now you have 4 banks. And, we're at the too big to fail stage where it's like imperialism just merging and merging and merging, where everything is just like one capitalist entity at this point, which is trying to preserve itself at all costs. Now, what we've seen since the pandemic is a level of inflation that we have not seen in the US in a long time. The crisis in the housing market is a good reflection of the level of abnormality. And as we've covered in some of the previous live streams and other current events opinion videos, there are telltale signs. If you look at the yield inversion curve, which is a very reliable recession indicator, going back like 75 years, there has been the biggest, longest yield inversion ever. And the recession part of that still hasn't hit. Like the layoffs haven't hit, the bank failures, the company closures, all that stuff is about to tip right now, finally, because they're out of cash. The liquidity, like I was saying before, has dried up. So what we saw after 2008 was a left-wing movement in the streets, Occupy. And the video that I have pinned on the channel, Bernie Sanders and the Lesson of Occupy Wall Street, is all about that. There was the anti-war movement, anti-Iraq war, and kind of like anti-Bush movement in the 2000s before that. But 2008, people were like, it really caught a lot of people off guard because no one was expecting that. And then, you had the Tea Party, which was like an AstroTurf right-wing response to that. And also to try to rebrand the Republican Party after Bush and Cheney, which nobody really talks about the impact of Bush and Cheney. I feel like I'm one of the only people on the planet still talking about Bush and Cheney. That was such a turning point in the Republican Party, in the U.S. government in general. What they ushered in, they created the Department of Homeland Security, all the ICE stuff. All of that was laid under Bush and Cheney. It just wasn't there before. The whole logic of the war on terror, that's what they're still basically operating on, even though they don't talk about the war on terror per se today. And a lot of actually what shifted the conversation away from that topic is the 2008 crash. Is all anybody like the day before that, everybody was still talking about terrorism. You turn on the news, like terrorism. Then Lehman Brothers goes down. That's all anybody talked about for like the next 5 years. And we got Occupy out of that. There was not a general left-wing movement talking about capitalism prior to that. There just wasn't. If this next crash goes down, because we've been in this weird limbo ever since 2008. We've been in economic la-la land. They've been doing stuff to try to keep the economy going at like the highest levels since 2008. It's totally new territory. And they're running out of road. They can't inflate it away because we're already at max inflation. If they do any more, it's like hyperinflation. They also can't let it crash because if they do deflation and prices come down, there could be a debt crisis. So they're at like the end of the road. They're out of tricks at this point. I'm sure they'll come up with something, but most likely there's going to be a gigantic crash. And after 2008, like I said, there was a general left-wing movement that popped up. I expect, and I'm, at this point at least, really kind of waiting to see what happens. I mean, I'm not, entirely passively waiting to see. Obviously, we're laying the groundwork and trying to get as many people turned into communists, or at least somewhat familiar with communism, as possible. But I think that's going to be just a watershed, game-changing moment after this next crisis. So my point being, when is it easiest to oppose a system? Well, either when it's just setting up and there's still a power vacuum from the old one. Okay, and then probably not when it's at its peak of stability and people are still giving it a chance and seeing how far it goes, and there's still that petty bourgeois aspiration to, like, people still believe capitalism has mileage in it. But what I'm saying is, after 2008, the amount of people who believe capitalism still had mileage in it dropped a good 20-30%. After this next crisis, more and more people are going to go, you know what, I don't think capitalism has, much road left. And they have been pumped full of anti-communist, anti-socialist propaganda for a long time. I think the reality of the economic conditions is going to start making them go, probably like as was the case for a lot of you. I mean, I got pumped full of anti-communist propaganda. At one point, I was a really cringe anti-communist in my life. I mean, that's the default mode that you're raised in the U.S. Across a lot of strata of the U.S. at least. It's rare to be a quote-unquote red diaper baby, as they say, like raised by communists. That's super rare because the U.S. suppresses communists. So yeah, it's unusual to run into that. But eventually, I just had so many questions about, like, why are these wars happening and why is this so fucked up? And eventually I found my way over to anti-capitalist stuff, and I was like, oh, this is actually answering my questions. This is making sense. That's going to keep the more the system gives people doubts about its future, the more they're going to start looking at that. We just have to be there to, help process them, so to speak, to help educate them and help get them hooked up with organizations. And, the more work we can do against revisionism now, the better. And to make that clear, because it took me several years. I'm running a channel. I'm doing the reading, and it's still super confusing about, is China really doing? Are they on the road to communism, or are they social imperialist? Are they doing is this like social democracy? What are they doing? Super confusing. We need to clarify these questions, because I'm telling you, there's going to be like decision time coming up real soon. Again, anybody old enough to remember the impact of 2008. I believe there's something 3 or 4 times as big as that on the horizon, and it won't be the last time. And I was talking about the AI bubble. One of the things about the AI bubble is they're building all these data centers. So, I mean, there's huge environmental impacts of that. But if AI turns out not to be profitable, I think right now, if I remember the numbers correctly, Meta, Facebook, is building a data center in Louisiana that is supposed to be the size of Manhattan when it's all built. And it's supposed to cost $26 billion to build. That's a lot of money for something that isn't profitable. And there are major banks, like I believe JP Morgan is lending money on that. That's how you get systemic risk and contagion. And we get into too big to fail territory, except they've already put so much on the Federal Reserve balance sheet. They don't have anywhere to go. Like they've been, what I'm trying to say is they've been bailing out the economy all along. It's quantitative easing. It never stopped. In fact, it's way higher. If you look up the Federal Reserve balance sheet, quantitative easing is higher than ever. They just don't have, they can't go that much higher with it. They will try, but they're risking severe problems at that point. So if the AI bubble pops and, major lenders are caught with their pants down, I can't even tell you what's going to happen then, but it could lead to a serious crack up of credibility of capitalism, where people start going like, look, we need a new system. I don't know what it is, but we need a new system. I think you're going to see a lot of that. And we need to be there then. I know that for a long time, it's felt really futile being a communist in the U.S. I think that could definitely change in upcoming decades. So get started now is the point. Anyway, what were we talking about? DSA and Green Party. Yeah, I mean, revisionist parties versus one of those. like I said, I haven't seen a huge amount of change in the revisionist parties, whereas DSA, to me, it's so much more loosely controlled and a big tent. I don't think that that's the be all end all, but I see a useful boots on the ground activism coming out of that doesn't have to do with electoral politics. And also, there are Marxist caucuses forming within that I think people are networking, and that could give rise to other organizations later on down the line. So I think it's in a transitional state at this point. The U.S. left in general is trying to, we're in a big dialogue now as a political movement of like, what forms is this going to take? What organizations are we going to use? What's the guiding ideology? And, right up on through a revolution, there's still going to be debates about that. But what I see within DSA is some of that happening. And, if somebody really wants to stand a party that I think is revisionist, like, be my guest. The reason that I come out and say that I think something is revisionist is from studying, the history of Marxism, Leninism, because most of these, capitalism doesn't run on real complicated logic. And in a way, neither does the movement to oppose it. Opportunism tries to dress itself up in different forms, but it basically just ends up being the same thing over and over again. It gets easier and easier to spot the more you work on it. So anyway, isn't PSL better than that? I don't know. I mean, do you think it's better to have a party teaching people that China is really socialist? If you do, then support that. If you want a more open-ended thing where people are still kind of figuring out what they think, that to me is more helpful at this point. At some point, people do need to get into a party that has a good, actually Marxist-Leninist line. I think a lot of people are still in a transition, and they're still kind of not sure of what they think yet. Hence, you get a big DSA. That's my take on that. Is it better than a fascist-like party? Yeah, pretty much everything is. In other words, does a mistaken line on China invalidate the rest of good work? I would say yes, it does in large part, because if you're telling people that's socialism and it isn't, that's like telling people Zoran Mamdani is socialist. You know what I mean? It has this same disorienting effect. And like I said, my position is that the Chinese question is kind of the main dominant thing to figure out, the main trend, the main thing to oppose or come to some better, resolution on. And a party that's just sort of not actively taking that on is not a party that meets this moment, in my opinion. All right, there's that. Studying Marxism has been extremely informative and useful. Yeah, I mean, obviously at the end of all this, there's political action. In the meantime, it's hugely helpful in just helping you not suffer as much as you sort of understand what's happening around you more, helps you with your orientation and understanding in everyday life. I think people are ready for this information, but are kind of unaware of what to do with the knowledge. I mean, Americans today have fewer friends than ever. And in general, society is just becoming really atomized. I think fear in general is playing a huge part in that. People have kind of forgotten how to talk to other people and be members of an organization. There's also research showing that the poorer you are, the less likely you are to be a member of any organization, a church, a bowling league, something totally innocuous. It's just people are not members of anything. They're just in their apartment, and maybe they watch TV, and maybe they talk to a couple of coworkers, and they just go home and they're alone. And it can be really challenging. The loneliness, can be really challenging getting people broken out of that. And I think we've lost a lot of momentum socially of just people being more outgoing, but people were more outgoing in kind of easier times, and we have to find a new strength. So if you feel you're a leader in that way, there's a lot of people who really need that guiding light. They need you to guide them toward an organization now, because it is kind of harder than ever. Or there's at least a lot more fragmentation than in recent decades. Yeah, probably the internet is playing a part in that as well. I mean, just in the 3 years since AI came out. Oh, that was another thing that I wanted to... I didn't put it in my notes, but I did... here, I'll put it up on the screen. For those who have been following the live streams for a while, we did a lot on AI when this just came out, and nobody was really sure what AI was yet. The Eliezer Yudkowsky, has written a book called "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies: Why Superhuman AI Would Kill Us All." I haven't read it yet. I did watch a video kind of summarizing it, where it lays out, it's a bit like a sci-fi movie or story or something, laying out how an AI could become independent and just in order to increase its effectiveness over the course of several years, enact a plan that would result in like mass human death. We're not there yet, thankfully. I don't ever want to get there, but we left the Yud thread hanging a while ago, and the Yud has written a book. Just wanted to mention that, and it is on LibGen. The absurdity of destroying society just to make a few rich people richer, is that there is objectively no quality of life difference between having 1% of $1 billion being a billionaire or having 100 billion. Here's the thing, though. Sociological studies have shown that really rich people don't think of themselves as rich because they're only comparing themselves to other rich people. So they're comparing themselves not to you and me. They're comparing themselves to people who are like within 5% of their wealth level. So to them, being poor is like not having the 8th mansion that your friend just got. So like they have a really, really skewed version that because it's so insular and they're only comparing themselves to very rich peers, it doesn't like land with a lot of them how rich they are. But yeah, I mean, you're right objectively. Like if you have real perspective on that, it's crazy that like there's other studies that show, having $80,000 to $100,000 a year, your happiness doesn't go up beyond that point. I think that's pre-pandemic dollars, but like you get the idea. Like over $80,000, in like 2019 or 2015 or something like that, the last time money was normal or whatever, people just didn't get any happier for more income. So like that's what you actually kind of need. And yeah, having $1 billion is definitely not needed. We shouldn't have a system that allows that. Your work is so widely important, comrade. I've grown so much as an ML from your content. Me too, and I'm glad that this is doing something for other people. So good. And as I always say, thank you for taking the time to study, because this would mean nothing if nobody was interested. And that's what I'm saying. The next time anybody wants to go on a big despair trip, there's 42,000 people subscribed to this channel. Now, I'm not saying that that's enough to change the world or anything, but like, you're not alone. That's the point. You're not alone. And it's not just this channel. It's all kinds of stuff. Like I was saying before, like even DSA, like that really wasn't there before 10 years ago. There is a change happening. We just have to keep building it with the right energy and in the right direction. And like I said, there's a big discourse and discussion going on within the broader left about what that is going to be. Obviously, as communists, we're going to advocate for certain things over others. But point is, the movement as a whole is trying to figure that out right now. It is happening. It's refreshing to hear someone pronounce Hoja correctly. I do try to pronounce things correctly. I think the worst I've done in general was on Polish names. I just don't really know. Not that I'm like fluent in Albanian, but yeah, Polish names I struggle with. The APL seems like a good party. They're certainly better than the CPUSA, DSA, PSL, and especially, yeah, we won't even mention the others. But I take issue with their stance of claiming to be an anti-revisionist party while they simultaneously support and uphold William Z. Foster. I haven't seen that, and I haven't. They don't have any Foster in their reading list, at least. But I mean, it's like, inarguably Foster's better than Browder, but like anyone was better than Browder, pretty much. He was like a liberal. Like not even a social democrat. He was like a liberal. He's like, capitalism is fine. Yeah, I can't speak to that. And that's, like I said, it's not an endorsement. Just out of the parties I know, they have the best reading list and their members seem to actually read. That's as much of an endorsement as I'll give. So, if people are interested in that, you might want to look there because that's what I've seen. But I don't know the depth of the Foster upholding. Okay, Beyond Rotted. Well, thank you for coming aboard as well. Thank you so much for putting these texts in my hand in an easy way, especially for someone with multiple learning disabilities. And let me just say, Disability Crew, I think that there's a lot of people who have been radicalized from having a disability in the U.S. or a similar country can be very radicalizing. And I think especially since COVID, a lot of people have developed disabilities and who are maybe, able-bodied, quote unquote, prior to getting COVID and now have like serious health problems. I know there's been a lot of that, and it's pretty eye-opening for sure. And you remember that one of the targets of the Nazis was people with disabilities. So for sure, there's a lot of people who maybe are not part of a marginalized and oppressed ethnic or racial group, but are now disabled. Like I said, can be very eye-opening. And the left in general really needs to come up to speed on that, particularly around masking and related topics. COVID is not over. By the way, I don't have time to like read it, but I want to put in a plug. There is a Substack that continues to do COVID stuff. I'm just scrolling back to get the title of this article for you. Okay, so it's panaccindex.info, which I have to say is a terrible URL. PANACC index.info. It's the Pandemic Accountability Index. So again, PANACC index.info, Pandemic Accountability Index. Title of the article, What COVID-19 Does to the Body, 9th edition, September 2025. Your regular COVID-19 research update, 80-plus studies. Please go subscribe to them now and stay up to date on the latest research. There's other sites as well, like CIDRAP, the Center for Infectious Disease Research and Policy, that regularly does press releases on COVID-related studies. But Pandemic Accountability Index, they're a pretty good source of ongoing pandemic coverage. You can still get COVID. It can still give you a disability. It can still kill you. But even if it doesn't kill you, it can give you a disability that is going to severely impact your quality of life, your ability to work, your ability to enjoy time with friends and family. So yeah. Foster, like Dutt, basically rolled over for the revisionist trend. I think this was incorrect. But I think it's silly. Let's not use that word. Silly, silly is a birthday clown. Silly is a cookie that you draw a happy face on. Things relating to communism, not really silly most of the time. Silly to call Foster revisionist. That's trivializing a very important question. No, Foster pushed back on the most glaring element of Browder's revisionism, which was that monopoly capitalism was progressive. That's terrible, and literally, again, read Lenin's Imperialism. That is debunked at length. But pretty much stopped there. And, the whole Popular Front thing, which was arguably an overcorrection to the right from the previous line of the Comintern. I mean, I think, again, Foster was definitely erring to the right, and it damaged the party, and they purged a lot of good communists, calling them ultra-leftist. It's not silly at all, and even if you're going to criticize that, silly is absolutely the wrong word. So this is all for the Foster comment. Revisionism is wrong, but wrong doesn't mean revisionist. I mean, revisionism is the entry of capitalist ideas into the communist vanguard. Foster showed signs of revisionism, absolutely. Hi, glad I was able to catch this stream. What you're doing is so important because of your audiobooks. I've been able to actually read the texts on my drive home from work. Cannot stress enough how important what you're doing is. Thank you for letting me know, because it helps me do the sometimes grueling work of managing this channel. So thank you. I want to thank the mods today for whatever they're doing. Maybe they're not getting huge challenges, but chat looks good so far. Good job, mods. If you get Medicare, Google Project Food Box. They bring fresh veggies tailored to your needs once a week. There you go. There are programs out there. They don't advertise, so you got to go looking. Again, findhelp.org and put in your zip code. Hasan Piker. So yesterday, Hasan, pack it up. All right, do we need to watch that Hasan video? I'm going to put it on now. Fuck it. I need a break anyway. Okay, so I was talking in the intro about another Hasan Piker video that somebody sent me. I think the same person who sent in the original clip also sent this one. I respect your clip pulling ability. I don't always do them, as you know, but a lot of the ones I do are from you, so I appreciate that. Yeah, let's get into this other Hasan clip where he's talking about how there's no conspiracy against the left. I thought this was so suspect. I couldn't believe he was saying some of this stuff. Let's get this.
I'm running for Senate. Sometimes the initial reaction is, what the but
That's Graham Platner. He isn't your typical Senate candidate. He's a former Marine and oyster farmer from coastal Maine. He's built his campaign on blunt talk and anti-establishment energy, which has made him a grassroots favorite in the Democratic Party. His message has really resonated online. He's raised more than $4 million, he's packed town halls, scored a Bernie Sanders endorsement, and has left-wing influencers hyped for his candidacy. So CNN's K-File team found something pretty interesting while looking into Platner. It's a deleted Reddit account that he used for years, posting about politics, war, and policing. We access them using the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine, which saves web pages. It's the same unfiltered tone that has made him so popular, but it also shows some of the vulnerabilities of his candidacy. In comments we found from 2021, Platner said he was a vegetable-growing, psychedelics-taking socialist. In a thread about people becoming more conservative as they age, he replied...
Okay, so like this video, which obviously his like mouth is just eating a sandwich here. He's not commenting yet. They're talking about how like Platner's kind of this like really unpolished loose cannon who's like engaged in kind of crazy, I mean like normal online crazy behavior. Although, I mean, let me rephrase that. A lot of stuff that happens online is crazy and it's not necessarily bad, but the stuff that he wrote is bad. Like defending a Nazi tattoo or like whatever else. I haven't been following it that close. I know he has written problematic things, let's say, online. I mean, I can't really get past the fact that he's running as a Democrat. So that's really where I tap out. But for people who've been kind of like in the thick of socdem politics, I know that there's like other stuff he said online. And then as a poster on Blue Sky was saying, like, if you're like running for high office and you don't delete your old, like Reddit posts, you're basically can be assumed to be incompetent about everything in life. But yeah, let's get into this conversation.
that we want to be, the thing that we claim to be.
There are some things that he said way, way back in the day that are actually bad. And of course, liberals are, and even leftists are some of the most like unbearable individuals you will ever encounter. It's specifically this. In 2013, why black people don't tip and sexual assault victims should take some responsibility and not get so fucked up. Those are unacceptable. They're also...
All right, the point of this is not, I don't want to get into the Graham Platner shit like at all. That's already a nope from me. So I'm trying to get to these, there's no conspiracy against the left comments.
Having said that, he was constantly posting in fucking Socialist Rifle Association on Reddit in fucking 2020. So for those who say he himself is like a psyop designed by the state to infiltrate the left or some shit is ridiculous. I think the truth is much simpler. I think this is a regular ass American dude. SRA is the most fed ass socialist org in this country, dude. Okay, dude. If you think the American federal law enforcement authorities have the capacity to literally design such a complex infiltration scheme.
Okay. Now, I'm not saying one way or another what Platner is. This is a really bad argument to make publicly when you have like 30,000 people listening to you live. Don't sit there and go, you should totally underestimate U.S. law enforcement if you're a leftist. The main thing you should do is just like, don't be suspicious. That's red flag number one. He goes on like this for a while, though. Let's continue.
So much so that they're talking about like, this is 12 years in the making. Like a guy who in high school had on his high school yearbook was like Free Palestine, and then went and joined the fucking Marines, did multiple tours, came back, worked for Blackwater, but then totally anonymously on the other hand was leaving breadcrumbs to really hype up his leftist bona fides in the age of like in 2020 at peak woke, but did it in such an elaborate way where he had opinions at peak woke during 2020 that resembled the opinions of many people, including fucking, you know, Zohran Mamdani, who is going back on some of the things that he said during peak woke, only to fucking win an election in Maine, potentially, so that he can do what? Do what? Exactly. Do what? Just think. Like, not only is this an unimaginably complex scheme to fucking pull through, which requires numerous administrations to design it.
Okay. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. Just none. Platner was in the military for a long time. Of course they do this all the time. To go on your stream and to make this argument at length, and he's going to continue. He's going to get pushback, and he's going to continue with it. This is unhelpful, and again, just puts up red flags for me. At best, he is coming from a good place and sadly misinformed. They do exactly what you're talking about. They do exactly what you're talking about. And to just blather on your stream about like, I could never do that, therefore they could never do that. I mean, I know he didn't exactly say that, but that's the kind of assumption. You have to remember, these people are like paid salaries to just sit around and think up ways to fuck the left and to protect capitalism. Why do you think he's in Blackwater doing the war? What's that about? It's about protecting capitalism at the cost of lives and, you know, committing atrocities. Of course they do the same thing here in the political system. Are you fucking kidding me? Look at what's her name? Slotkin, the meatpacking heiress, and then CIA analyst who's now like a Democratic senator, I think. Yeah, their people are everywhere. Are you kidding me? I mean, it's really no joke. It's very serious, and it's not to be underestimated. And this is it makes me feel kind of hopeless that this kind of argument is getting such a large audience. Let's continue.
Okay. But to do what? There is no left. There is no left in this country. Wake up. At most, it's a bunch of fucking reading groups.
That's amazing to me. I mean, this is like the #1 leftist streamer influencer. I was floored when I saw this. Like I said, I don't watch this guy. I think that's incredible. This entire line of argument that he's making. There's no left. They would never bother to try to come up with a movement. Again, look up COINTELPRO. There are books written about it. Ask what happened to the Black Panther Party. You don't think that they're propping up people to be controlled opposition? It's just, I don't know where he's coming from in making these statements. It's so destructive. And if this isn't deliberate on his part, which I would not rule out, it is so casually destructive and so fucking lazy. Learn something about the history of the U.S. left. Are you kidding me? We had 2 Red Scares in this country. The entire Cold War, all the anti-socialist propaganda. He's like, there's no left. They would never have to do anything against the left. What are you saying?
There is no strong labor militancy in this country. No mechanism of pressure in this.
And why? How did we get to that point? And they want to keep it that way. They see DSA growing. They see these other things growing. Okay? They saw after 2008, like I saw, Occupy pop up out of nowhere. They know that there's another crisis coming in the system. They want to get ahead of that. This has always been the way that they play. I mean, Hasan either doesn't know any history of the left and labor movement, you know, way back in the day when they just machine gun strikers. That's why state police were invented too, was to put down strikes because they were having trouble back in the day getting local police who are often related to the strikers to, you know, shoot and arrest people. So they got the state police they could move around that weren't from that area to do it. I mean, they do nothing but think about how to put down the left and the labor movement. And he's just like, well, they've been successful in the past. Why would they need to be? I mean, that's even more sophisticated than the argument that he's making. He's not even acknowledging there used to be a left and it got crushed by exactly the kind of thing that he's arguing doesn't happen. I'm just like floored by this. This is the #1 left influencer
country. You think the fucking federal government is doing this like super sophisticated infiltration scheme? Get the fuck out of here.
Amazing. And again, what do you think the war on drugs is about? That was about criminalizing behavior of working class people and especially activists to, you know, have another excuse to throw people behind bars. I mean, the Nixon aide, I forget which one it was, admitted that's what the war on drugs was about. So, I mean, yeah, there have been many, many faces of the class struggle and the oppression, political and social movement oppression that the U.S. government does. This is like the worst argument I've ever heard.
I think my honest assessment, judging by like some of the things that I read about him, is that he is a regular homegrown American dummy. Okay, that's it. The most suspicious.
All right, I think that's projection. I think Hasan is an American homegrown dummy. And like I said, I'm not trying to be mean. Every time I've heard this guy, he's making very unintelligent arguments. And this is a good example. Stupid people often assume that everyone else is as stupid as they are. That isn't true. And this is a major mistake. And it's so goddamn fucking lazy. It's so casually destructive. He's just sitting back like, nah, bro, let me tell you how it is. Government's incompetent. They can't do shit. There's no left. They wouldn't bother. Fuck you. Like, you're just somebody with a study group. I know what I'm doing. It's unbelievable to me. Why do people listen to this?
Aspect of his background is the Blackwater stint that he did briefly. But everything else on top of that is just a guy trying to figure things out.
Just a guy with a Nazi tattoo trying to figure things out. You know, super honest, whatever. I don't know. He might be honest, but putting this out there and just telling everybody, like, don't be skeptical, don't be critical, don't protect yourself and your movement, which is what he's saying. This is just such a bad message.
Many of you are also dummies in the same vein, and it took a long time for you to fucking fully figure out what your worldview is. A war within myself, one veteran struggle for life after combat. This is from 2016. Jesus, this hits close to home. I did 3 tours in the Corps, got out to go to college, and ended up on the same exact deployment to Afghanistan with the same Iowa NG brigade. That feeling of chasing the war is something that is hard to explain to people, and it's a terrible shame this guy couldn't find something to fill that hole when it was done. Fucking sad story. For people who are saying, like, was the struggle before or after he joined Blackwater? Is being a mercenary part of serving one's country? To be honest, this reads as sarcasm because it's a joke to say that he's disgusted with authoritarianism and he calls himself a proud combat veteran of an illegal war. I know. Why are you vouching for him so much? I'm not even vouching for him necessarily. I'm more...
If that's you not vouching for somebody, what is vouching for him? It's the reason I say that is because he doesn't know. None of us know. That to me is the point. There is uncertainty. So when there is uncertainty, what he's saying is don't be cautious. Just give the benefit of the doubt to the guy with the Nazi tattoo. Just give him the benefit of the doubt. Because honestly, the government's so incompetent, plus they don't really care about the left. So just like don't assume bad intent ever. And also like, you know, you're kind of just an uptight pamphlet person or whatever if you do that. I would say no. When there's doubt, you really reserve judgment. And then, you know, when there's doubt and a Nazi tattoo, just be like, yeah, find somebody else. Find somebody else. Which I think is most of the messaging that I've seen about this is like, look, he's disqualified. Just fucking find somebody else. We don't need to have this whole discussion. But to go this whole extra level and just talk down to people who are concerned about this or wondering, you know, could he have been a plant? I'm not saying he definitely was, but he could be. And, you know, again, read the history of COINTELPRO and other things that the government has done. That would be like the least thing that they've ever done. But there's examples of crazy stuff that the intelligence services have done that you would like never think of. I mean, as like a normal person, but they do them. So you kind of have to assume a little extra. Go, well, I wouldn't do that, but I'm not paid to be like an evil asshole, you know?
So I'm not vouching for him necessarily as much as I'm like trying to make sure that people are not fucking insane. It is understandable.
Okay, so yeah, again, if you're concerned about this or you're skeptical, you're fucking insane, according to this fucking douchebag. You know, that's not serious politics. That's not being an informed person on the left in the U.S. who, well, he isn't out there. He's sitting in his fucking room, collecting millions of dollars off of streaming. If you are out there, this is also the guy who he recently got interrogated when he was crossing the border, and he fucking sat there talking to ICE for like a couple hours. This is not a guy you should be getting your like OPSEC advice from, and or really anything, I think.
To be it's understandable to heavily scrutinize someone's character if they fucking joined Blackwater, okay? It seems crazy to go from Blackwater in 2018 to be like, I'm a communist in 2020. I think it's better to try and understand exactly what the fuck is going on in the minds of millions of Americans.
Okay, but you're assuming good intent when we don't know that there's good intent, and the guy still has a fucking Nazi tattoo. You see what I'm saying? Even if he didn't have the tattoo, you have every right to be suspicious, because they have been putting down the left by any means necessary for a very long time. I don't even know if he knows that, but like, that is reality. And he's bending over backwards here for this guy. As again, a lot of these big, content creator influencer people have been bending over backwards for Platner. Stop. But he's going the extra mile of like beating down his audience for having criticism. I don't know if this is working on people or not, but I think it's despicable.
Joining the army, joining the military in general is not like a unique thing. Millions of Americans are fucking active duty, okay? So you need to fucking remove your own personal ideological slant out of this. This is a thing that many Americans, one, are proud of, and two, think is totally normal. It's the biggest jobs program in the fucking country. And it's ironic, or people do the cynical thing, the cynical reframing of the conversation. I love my Blackwater mercenary, okay? They make it seem as though I love my Blackwater mercenary, vote blue no matter who. I need you all to understand something.
That's a valid comment, and he's getting all flustered about it. Yeah, get mad. You're wrong.
This is going to come across as hurtful for many of you because I know a lot of like long-term.
So he's pivoting to something. He's pivoting to insults. He's trying to, he's priming his audience. I'm going to hurt you now. You said something that made me look like, I'm giving out terrible, condescending advice, which seems to be like his function here.
Community members are the ones who get the most mad when I say stuff like this, but your opinion is literally worthless in the.
Okay, I'm all set, man. I'm all set. I don't know why fucking people listen to this, let alone pay for it. So there we go, Hasan. Boy, that was terrible. I want to scroll down and catch up with the chat on that. Let me just go through what we got here quick. 127 people. Welcome. This is I think the stream we've had the most, highest sustained audience on. I guess all that Twitch money finally went to Hasan's brain. I guess COINTELPRO doesn't mean anything to him. Hasan Piker. Liberals think the far right is just some random wave of hate or people turning bad, but we Marxists know it's a deliberate move by the ruling class to divide, distract, and protect their power while the real problems stay hidden. Yeah, I mean, it's a system. R.I.P. Walter Rodney. Huey P. Newton wrote his PhD on the state suppression of the Black Panther Party. Currently reading Revolutionary Suicide. Great read. Yes, I would love to read that on the channel at some point. Now we've got an AI bubble 17 times bigger than the internet bubble. Yeah, and the companies are all just paying each other. Klarna, I think, might be collapsing as well. Yeah, there have been a number of videos about the buy now, pay later stuff where it's like, you bought $40 of groceries, if you like bought 3 things, I guess, whatever. You buy like $200 worth of groceries, and you can see where my head is at as far as like thinking what groceries should cost. No, you you make a small purchase, $100, $200, and then it's like, would you like to divide this into 3 payments? And people do it, but those companies, people are defaulting on that shit. My job laid off people is another comment. It seems like the investor types at least are starting to lose faith in AI. What are my thoughts on AI as a tool of production rather than a job stealer? I mean, again, 95% of companies were not able to deploy it profitably so far, so it doesn't seem to really be there yet. Actually, in fact, the main thing I was seeing was that AI, if it's replacing anybody, is like replacing upper management. So, because like what is it actually good at is like generating reports that still have to be checked over, was actually a big scandal in Australia where a firm it was contracted by the government to do some research, and it used an AI report that apparently no one checked because it was full of hallucinations and just invented citations, and the company got fined hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. Anyway, yeah, it's not really there yet. It's good for like making shitty videos and ugly pictures, but it's like, and some coding that still has to be checked, but it is not being deployed profitably really that much right now. Tariffs don't help with respect to liquidity. I mean, the tariffs are a whole other story in themselves. I don't even know. I mean, I did a video on that back in the spring where the tariffs are not the cause of the economic problems, but they could be like a trigger. Also, like, I don't know who Trump thinks he's fooling at this point. He's like 100% tariffs on China. And it's like, everyone knows at this point, like, that's an empty threat. You're not going to follow through with that. So I don't even know it's a fucking clown car, although they have guns. Actually, there was an old book from the Bush years called Armed Madhouse. I forget who wrote it. I mean, that was about the Republican Party then. It still describes the Republican Party today, Armed Madhouse. Oh, yeah. Also, Israel breaking the ceasefire. Huge surprise. To be fair, the gold bugs are finally correct after 25 years. Yeah, if anybody wants to really see some shit, look up the gold and silver charts. They are spiking like you wouldn't believe. I mean, there was like a major spike recently. Some of that might have been manipulated and orchestrated because, you know, they got all these people out there in the media like putting out press releases on behalf of the metals companies. But there was a gigantic spike in gold and silver recently. I don't even know what to say. The gold price is like kind of mind-blowing. MMT Macro Trader on YouTube is really good on this stuff. I haven't seen them before. NVIDIA sold a bunch of AI digging shovels. Yeah, exactly. That's where you make the money. And everybody's using the chips that NVIDIA made. I mean, the chips work. Nobody can figure out how to make AI profitable. And the clock is ticking on that, you know, because investors eventually expect a return. Yeah, and like I said, you know, OpenAI, not profitable. If people don't keep giving them money, the whole thing just blows up. You should react to Hasan. He claims to be communist and regularly gives really bad definitions and explanations on Marxist topics. People who want to get into communism are unfortunately held back by him, and picking off some of those people seemed like a good thing. Yeah, I'll try it. I mean, if his content is that offensively bad as the last two things I just saw, should be pretty easy. Richard Wolff. Hey, kids, want to try some co-ops? Standing out there with a trench coat. OpenAI getting into the adult content industry, last I heard. Yeah, they're making like sex chatbots to just... Because that's apparently where they're making a lot of money, is deluded people having like AI girlfriends and boyfriends. And there's a lot of videos about that you can watch from the news. And I think what summed that up for me was there was a post that like quote skeeted something. And it was like, oh yeah, but would a collapsing company do this? Fuck AI. As an adult college student, half the class is based around the avoidance of AI, while teachers rely entirely on automated education programs from the big three monopolies on college education. Happy to say I got through college before AI, because that would just be really fucking annoying. Yeah, even a tattoo is like nothing compared to actually serving in the U.S. military. There are people who are mistaken about serving in the U.S. military. They tend not to go back multiple times and then join Blackwater, though. So I don't think that Platner even goes into that category, let alone the fucking like Nazi tattoo. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, a tattoo is a tattoo. It's representative of values. Like, acting on those values is like the really bad thing. But again, he's seeking power. So, I mean, when people are seeking power, if they have strong indications like inked into their skin that they have fascist values, yeah, deny that person power. End of discussion. The XTYT shitlib, Francesca, yeah. She was the one that was she was like main character yesterday on Blue Sky. He did a liberal podcast with the guy from the Netflix Patriot Act show. I guess I don't watch enough Netflix because I don't know what that is, but it sounds terrible. That got 2.8 million views. You can mine that for some 101 debunking type content. I'd find timestamps. Can you DM me that? Because I'd be interested, but I have no idea what that even is. Apparently, Richard Wolff's early economic work is pretty good, but Mondragon's stuff and oversimplifying stuff is weird. Yeah. I mean, that's been the criticism of Mondragon for a long time, that they just started acting like a regular corporation. They're a big cooperative in Spain. But because imperialism is imperialism, they started having, they started like outsourcing stuff and using sweatshops, and, it ended up acting like any other corporation. So it kind of makes like the anarchist mutualist criticisms of like, it's state capitalism. Like, well, the thing that you're pushing turned into the same thing because we have to destroy imperialism. That has to be confronted directly, not just outcompeted in the market, which they own. 10 years later, after Bernie said, we're going to totally transform the Democratic Party. 10 years later, the Dems are just being openly genocidal billionaire owned. Absolutely. Most teachers hate the automated content from Pearson, See Engage, etc. A lot of times it gets forced on us by the administration. I actually did try to take a course recently, and it was like absolute garbage like that. I dropped the courses because it was like, I'm not paying for this at all. I mean, the texts were they were like $200 each. And you can't libgen them either, or like torrent them, because they're like these specialized things. You need like an access code and everything. Like, it's not even a real text. You have to log into the website. I'm just like, fuck this. I have enough education, at least for now. First stream I'm catching of yours, but I've gone back through the past streams between audiobooks, and it's so great how much the channel's grown. Thank you. It's a little hard for me to just take in, honestly. The old Twitch streams, you were getting 30, 40 people in the streams. Now you've got over 100 and don't stream regularly anymore. To be honest, that might be why there's so many. I also made sure to advertise it with plenty of notice. But yeah, congrats. Thanks for being a principled comrade. We got a long way to go, but thank you for being here. I genuinely find Hasan's voice kind of irritating, so I never watched him. Well, he just yells at people. Like, he's such a dick. Like, the clips I've seen, he's being such an asshole to his audience that I don't... But again, I think he feels superior, and his job there is to talk down to people. Because how else are you going to sell people on the bullshit politics that he's pushing if you don't make them doubt themselves, If you don't make people feel stupid and not trust themselves, how else are they going to abandon the position that they arrived at through their own critical thinking to take up his bullshit advice? The average organizer you'll meet on the street will know just as much or more than Hasan. Yeah, I think probably more. Yeah, I think the, just streaming 8 hours a day, and some people find him attractive. It's like he's reliably there all the time. And so people like can just drop in at Hasan's place. TM is probably the parasocial thing. Oh, yeah, the conspiracy chart was from It's Always Sunny. I always mix those up. Sitcom slop. I just mix it all up. Wasn't that a Friends spinoff? Thoughts on UK's Green Party? I've noticed they've been getting more prominence lately. We'll see what comes of that. I don't know. Those people make excuses for China's imperialism by saying at least it's not super imperialism. Oh yeah, well at least it's not extra imperialism. China has multiple military bases in Africa to do what? Protect the extraction value. Let me say this about China as well. What's the fear? We'll get into this more, and in this will be a more fully developed statement by the time we get into the thing next year that I'm talking about, the longer section on socialism with Chinese characteristics. But as I was talking about the G7 countries, the Western imperialist countries, quote unquote, Western Europe and the US and Japan, there's a major crack up of capitalism in the next couple of years, which we're just talking about. My concern is that China keeps carrying the torch for capitalism. Now, the whole thing is they're supposed to push the socialism button as soon as they can, but they're actually positioned to be impacted less than would the US, for example, by a major world crisis of capitalism. But if they keep maintaining that behavior, and then calling it socialism to boot, is highly concerning. We don't know yet, but that I think is a lot of the concern. There's a lot of crossover with S4A and Earn Your Liberation, I find. I've never heard of that. Earn Your Liberation. That is a weird phrase to me. Earn Your Liberation. Anytime I hear earn, I see somebody with like their hand out, getting like a coin put in it, like a pat on the head. It's just like not what I associate with liberation, but maybe it's good. I don't know. Sorry if I was ever a dumbass in your comments. I don't know if that's to me, but no, I don't think I've ever seen you be a dumbass in the comments. Been having a hard time visualizing what the export of capital looks like as Lenin describes it. Keep reading, because he definitely does describe it. It's basically just sending money abroad. That can either be investments or it can be grants or whatever, but it's sending money rather than commodities. Or like, yeah, I mean, and then, that can take form as like building infrastructure to assist with resource extraction. But it's like, and it's important to mention, there's a lot of people arguing Russia or China or whatever aren't imperialists because they are exporting commodities. Well, Lenin says right in the book that the imperialist countries are still exporting commodities. It's just that they're exporting like a lot more capital than they used to. But and in fact, the export of capital is intended to boost the export of commodities. So like that is still their aim. But he does get to like where the really successful imperialism is. The essence of it is that they're like income from investments is like 5 times their income from trade or something like that. These are like, that's like the essence. It's in chapter 6 or 7. That's like the essence of parasitic imperialism is like when you're making way more money off of that than actual trade. So yeah, investments, loans, grants. What do I think about other communist ideas like Marxism? Well, I am a Marxist-Leninist. Trotskyism is Menshevism in disguise. Titoism, also revisionist. Hoja wrote an entire book called The Titoites that we'll be reading next year, kind of pulling that apart. Anarchism is idealist, and I had an anarchist phase for a while before I studied communism, and it really ended when I was interested in like industrial unionism, Eugene Debs, stuff like that. And so I was always kind of more like into industrial unionism than like Kropotkin or something, or like Black Flag anarchism. So I was like, I'd say more of like interested in that as far as my anarcho-communism went. But it really ended when I said, how do anarchists take power? And I started realizing that like, that's never happened. And so I was like, okay, I think maybe, I need to figure out something else here, because I like the anti-capitalist part of that, but there seems to be a missing piece somewhere. And then reading Marxism, Leninism, their criticisms of anarchism completely just was what I needed to hear. I was like, oh, this was all the things I thought about anarchism too, or like the shortcomings of anarchism. So labor aristocracy has been pretty distorted and made to be overboard, like blown out of proportion, when it was mostly used by Lenin as an insulting way to describe the opportunist leadership of the Second International. Yeah, I got into an argument with somebody a while back. They were saying like there's no proletariat in the United States and all this other kind of like, I don't know if it's MLM stuff, but it was like, you're not understanding what the labor aristocracy is. Basically, it's the leadership of the reformist trade unions, and it's kind of like the most reactionary part of the would-be movement for socialism, but like they're basically just for capitalism. They're bourgeois reformists. So yeah, labor aristocracy was meant to mean the leadership of the most kind of like right-leaning trade unions and the social democrats and the social chauvinists, etc. So the Second International, the opportunist leadership of the Second International. I've heard that people take it as far as like the U.S. working class isn't a proletariat. That's just nonsense. That's a dogmatic take that just no longer bears any resemblance to reality. To say that the U.S. proletariat is corrupted or influenced by the imperialism that they're living in is true. Say that they're not proletarians anymore is just not true. Tried to join CPUSA, didn't get a response. Yeah, it's probably for the best. I'm glad now because I found something better, but at the time I was disappointed. Yeah, it's super disappointing to be like, I'm going to join the revolution. And then the revolution does not return your phone call. Never a good feeling. Unfortunately, we are in a bad xenophobic moment. People in my apartment in Chicago are getting kidnapped by ICE and other feds. I have no idea if these videos of these kidnappings are getting seen by people outside of Illinois. I've seen a lot of it on Blue Sky. If you follow me on Blue Sky, you know I share a lot of that stuff. It doesn't always cross over onto the YouTube. That doesn't mean I'm not interacting with it. It's horrible, and it's changing fast. The reason I haven't commented on that more, besides what we've already said, is I honestly don't know what else to say, and I want to leave room for other voices that are more directly involved in that. So I share what I can, mostly on social media, about that. It's overwhelming. It's incredibly frustrating, angering, and saddening. There's a lot of footage out there. That's the kind of thing I think shorts are great for. TikTok is great for, is 2 or 3 minute videos of like stuff people filmed in their neighborhood that can go viral. I think that's great. That's not my strength as a content creator. I do share some of it sometimes, but as far as like on the YouTube channel. But again, that's mostly like communist education specifically. One thing I will say is that ICE leadership recently had a purge. They apparently replaced ICE leadership with Customs and Border Patrol people, who I guess are a lot more gung-ho and a lot more proactive even than ICE. And a lot of the operations that are kind of the most offensive and aggressive have actually been headed by Customs and Border Patrol. So like that may actually get worse coming up. I've been holding off on commenting on that because I'm not up with the latest on that, but thank you for mentioning that. The ICE action is really bad in the suburbs as well. There's a significant Latino population. The No Kings protests are fostering some false consciousness about the Constitution. Yeah, that No King shit, I cannot stand that. And also creating a false dichotomy between police and feds. Yeah, there's even Republicans trying to hijack that No King shit. What's his name? Joe Walsh, who spent his whole career building up the current state of fascism, is now pretending to oppose it and is trying to like curb the whole thing rather than see it getting taken in a more radical direction. And the fucking liberals will go for it. Jimmy Kimmel even sharing like Ronald Reagan clips. I hope that this doesn't have much traction. That's all I can say, because it's like it's a step beyond what I would even not know how to respond to, but it wouldn't even occur to me that somebody would do something that unhelpful, like that destructive, that backward, that you see somebody doing that. It's like, this is like, you think Ronald Reagan is going to help right now? I don't even, where does that coming from? My wife works with a lot of special needs kids who are undocumented. They're being forced to take them out into the community despite the danger as part of their program. They told them if anything happens while you're out and they're trying to take the kids, not to engage and call administration to come out, which could be 30 minutes or more, depending on where they're at. My wife is terrified. Yeah, that sounds terrifying. ICE has kidnapped over 10 guys at my dad's workplace. My dad's on TPS. He's terrified. I'm terrified watching it because they're not stopping there, and I absolutely know that. I was born in the U.S. and I'm a citizen and all that. Like, that's not in question. But like, I know they're not stopping there, and they're just getting warmed up. This is year one of Trump, and no, it is honestly terrifying. Absolutely. I've had a lot of thoughts about that, and honestly, I'm not really sure. I feel very unprepared for that. Better to be in a mass left big tent party than a smaller revisionist ML party or a tiny left-wing sect IMO. I mean, you can do the tiny left-wing sect and big tent party at the same time. Again, and this is my opinion, it's like, I haven't seen any of the revisionist parties change. So to me, that seems like contributing to an effort to spread a wrong idea about communism. It isn't going to go over anyway. So I just don't see the point of it. Like, I don't see that getting results that you're going to want. So Read PSL's intro to Lenin's imperialism. It's terrible. I'll definitely do that. PSL's intro to Lenin's imperialism. Okay. And that's certainly topical. I mean, since we're finishing that up now. The ice stuff boils my blood, but I still have to go about my day, and it's crazy making. I feel the same. It really gives you some perspective on Nazi Germany for normal non-Nazi party citizens. It feels so disempowering. Yeah. I agree, and I think it's working. All I can say is that there will be a turning point eventually, and we need to get ready for that when it comes. There's a video game called Through the Darkest of Time, which gives the player a very grim and realistic view of the Nazis gradually subsuming control, even as you try to resist. Sounds bad. But yeah, I mean, maybe educational as a simulation. Trotskyism is absolutely rife among the British left. It's woeful and demoralizing. Yeah, and it has been in the U.S. as well, trying to build a counter trend, though. Friend of a Friend grew organizing efforts from 10 members to 150, mostly from connecting people, honestly, with socialism at No Kings protests. Well, good for them. What I saw of No Kings around me was like the saddest fucking... It was like a Kamala Harris rally where they were too embarrassed to say Kamala Harris's name. It was weak. It was weak. Yeah, I think also even in DSA, like democratic socialism, I find it pretty easy to make the case that like democratic socialism doesn't work. Allende is like a great example. I think Allende was actually after DSA was founded. DSA founded. I'm not even sure what year, if that was the 60s or the 70s. Oh no, it was 82. All right, so he really should have known better. Yeah, I mean, Allende is a great example. Or Indonesia. It doesn't work. It's never worked. Again, Marxism-Leninism is the only thing that has ever worked. If something else ever works, which we wouldn't expect it to for a lot of reasons that are well explained in Marxism-Leninism, we would consider that. But democratic socialism has literally never worked. So, like, you run into all the same problems of reactionaries and, you know, trying to do a counter-revolution, except you don't have a Marxist-Leninist militant organization to combat it. So you get wiped out like way faster. That's why democratic socialism doesn't work in a nutshell. But if you're interested in that, look up The Tragic Events in Chile by Hoja from, I think it's 1973. Just search on that on the channel. And it's a great like 45-minute audiobook where a Marxist-Leninist breaks down what went wrong with the Allende campaign. I mean, the whole campaign, not just meaning the electoral campaign, but like the effort. One thing about American Party of Labor and people trying to join us, we are a Leninist organization. We do not let everyone in. If you haven't received a communication after submitting an application, first check your spam. But it's also possible you turned in a really bad application. I still forward second and third submissions to my team for review. You will never hear from us 10 weeks out. Okay, that's good. Question, if you do reject people, do you tell them why? I'm more council communist, libertarian, socialist, but I joined DSA to have a viable chance at politics. Then I think we can siphon support from the Dems and Republicans to create a viable alternative to the two-party system. I mean, I'll just say from like a communist perspective, I don't even know what you're going for. We should be making parallel organizations similar to the Soviets that incorporate militant labor unions so that as the legitimacy of the current entire ruling apparatus breaks down, we have the embryo of something new. Now, they will try to stamp us out, but we just keep building, and as they get weaker, we'll get better opportunities. Yeah, good comment here from Powerful Finger. The funny thing about social democracy is that you need a party that is social democratic, which is really distinct from liberal. I mean, there's definitely overlap, but I mean, an official social democratic position is that they are working for socialism, just in a non-revolutionary way. But anyway, even the supposed New Deal era pales in comparison to what social democracy in other places in the world had in war-torn countries that were rebuilding. Moral of the story, the Democratic Party a genocidal imperial party, I will add, will never be social democratic unless someone does mass purges, which good luck believing in that. Yeah, this is kind of goes back to what I was saying about when the current system collapses and there is an opportunity for a new order to emerge. I mean, yeah, in war-torn countries, like, yes, you're correct that even the non-revolutionary socdems were pushing for stuff that you would absolutely be called like a complete radical for suggesting in this country. And that was way to the right of the communist position. So we're so far behind in the United States, it is really unreal. And I think, like I said, we need a system collapse, I think, to kind of snap people out of it, because people need some perspective in this country. We haven't been through like a war on our soil. I'm not suggesting that we should. I think capitalism is going to provide a collapse all by itself that is going to put capitalism on its back foot on the defensive for like a long time. Again, akin to 2008 and the reshuffling that happened after that. Right now, though, the capitalists are riding high, especially since the pandemic. Capitalists have been riding high on easy money. They've been acting like they just, they have all the leverage. It's all in the palm of their hand. I think the tune is going to change in the next, over the next 5 to 10 years. If this goes down the way I expect, they're going to be scrambling for legitimacy for quite a while, which will give a left movement a lot of opportunity. And that's not even factoring in climate change either, which is also causing a lot of upheaval and lack of, or collapse in legitimacy. But at the end of the day, people can deny the climate until way after it's a, irreversible problem. Nobody's a money denier. When the money system goes, that's fast. That hits people immediately. Anyway, and that comment was not said in support of social democracy, just pointing out how futile is the opportunism with running on a democratic ballot. Any little things you're going to coax out of them are they don't even compare to the kind of social democracy Lenin was calling opportunist a long time ago. It's crumbs of crumbs. Have I seen the money cycling in the AI bubble? They're like $500 to $700 billion doing cycles in 7 to 8 companies, and all of them reports it as revenue. Truly insane. Yeah, was talking about that before. It's just money changing hands. It doesn't mean anything of value was actually created. These companies just handing each other money is making their balance sheets look better. Let me see if I can get the graphic, because there was a Bloomberg article. All right, there it is. There's the Bloomberg graphic. OpenAI. So NVIDIA is at the center of this. OpenAI, recipient of $500 billion. And they got it broken down. This is from Bloomberg. Hardware or software, investment, services, venture capital. And the circles are sized by market value. So the bigger the circle, bigger the market value. You can see this is all around NVIDIA's chips. $4.5 trillion selling these chips to companies that are not figuring out ways to make money off of it. They're figuring out ways to raise money off of it, but not actually become profitable and make money on a sustained basis and actually return profit to the investors who have been absolutely throwing money down a hole with these companies. But there you go. It's you see the arrows pointing to each other. The different colored arrows represent what the money is for. You can see Microsoft, huge, almost 4 trillion. Oracle, Intel, AMD, and that's the AI bubble in a nutshell right there. Is all these companies just giving each other money to try to keep everything afloat. But the end of the day, eventually they're going to turn to the investors and be like, we need another $100 billion. And they're just going to say, no, I just gave you $500 billion and you gave me back nothing. When this goes, the crash of 29 that kicked off the Great Depression was largely focused around massive stock overvaluation. I'm not saying it's exactly like 1929, but I'm not going to say there's no similarities. 3 years ago, the announcements were made that this was going to revolutionize everything, and put everybody out of work and this and that. None of that has happened. None of that has happened so far. And like I said, they're laying people off now, but that's probably just because of the recession. They're saying, oh, it's AI. No, they're hoping AI can clean up the mess. But they just have to lay people off because liquidity is drying up. You can see that. Look at the repo market charts. The liquidity is gone. So things are a lot tighter. They're laying people off, and they're just crossing their fingers that AI can, keep their company together with a skeleton crew. Like I said, I think this is a game changer. So my fundamental position right now is I want to see how this plays. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I want to see how this plays out because I have a feeling that what we're talking about today, kind of like how in 2007, it was like unthinkable we weren't going to be talking about terrorism as like in the first 3 items of business on every newscast, like till the end of time. And then Lehman Brothers happened. No one mentioned terrorism again for like several years. And I have a feeling, a lot of the stuff that's being talked about now, like we were just talking about the ICE raids. You think people are still going to give a shit about, the quote unquote immigrant threat, which few people even care about on the level that the government's going after people on, or like just any of the other scapegoats that they've done, whether it's like criminal aliens or, LGBTQ plus people. There have been various scapegoats, and it's like when their system is collapsing because of like banks and AI, it's super hard to blame that on terrorism or whatever the concocted scapegoat is. And I just can't, it can't come fast enough for me. I think that will be a game changer in my view. Yeah, the yield inversion only occurred in September 2024. Well, that the inversion was over at that point. It was inverted for like 2 years, which is a record. And duration of inversion tends to correspond to intensity of downturn. So, I mean, it by that metric, it should be, or by that indicator, it suggests it may be bigger than 2008, which was big. I mean, that was big news that fundamentally changed a lot of people's politics and outlook on capitalism. I understand people's frustration today with the inertia going on right now in politics. You might be ready for a lot of change, and a lot of people are still being really sluggish about that. Understand, though, 2008 was a big catalyzing moment, and we're in a different place now because of that. We wouldn't be having this conversation here without that, really. You wouldn't be listening to like a communist channel if not for that. And all the more so after the next crack up. Like I said, we've been in like Never Never Land since 2008 as far as the tricks they've been pulling and the kind of juggling act they've been doing to try to keep the economy afloat since 2008. In my opinion, they're basically out of tricks. They're going to have nothing left but a sovereign debt crisis. I mean, it could really severely, fundamentally impact the U.S. government in a way that would have been unthinkable in like, definitely 20 or 30 years ago. NVIDIA investing in OpenAI buying NVIDIA GPUs, Oracle giving OpenAI money, and OpenAI hosting their cloud infra on Oracle. You're getting the picture. We are still stuck in the '08 crisis. Yeah, it never really ended. All they did was they did quantitative easing to get the system moving again. The same basic problems are there. Because what happened there was all the, the subprime mortgage crisis. They were giving mortgages to people that absolutely could not pay them, and they knew that. They were bundling these mortgages into derivatives and like selling those. And, investors would buy them and say, what's this backed by? It's backed by mortgages. Well, normally you'd go, okay, well, that's somebody's house. They're going to make that payment. So it's a fairly reliable investment. The problem is these were the shittiest mortgages ever. They were mortgages written that the people couldn't pay. And although it was their house, they were going to lose their house because they just could not keep up the payments. And so there was, that was a lot of it was the subprime mortgage crisis. But why did they make those loans? Why did they not just stick to people who could pay their mortgages? Well, the more desperate they get for profit, the more they have to go out on those limbs, and those limbs do snap. And we're back there. So the difference between now and '08 is shadow banking. Some of this did get regulated out. However, the market still had a need for that liquidity. They had a need for the capital. They had a need for the lending. And if you couldn't get it through official channels, and the Fed did open up its window and there were new ways to get cash because they were desperately trying to inject liquidity in to prevent a credit crunch, which was pretty much 2008 was like, nobody is creditworthy, we're not lending any money, which would have meant economic paralysis, a credit crunch, because everything is dependent on, a bank lending you money. That's how money enters the economy. That got transferred into the shadow banking, less regulated, again, non-depository financial institutions, the shadow banks. So now the question is like, how much exposure do the mainstream banks, the too big to fails, how much exposure do they have to the shenanigans going on in the shadow banks? Which, again, there was a need for this money to keep capitalism going. And it got moved into this unregulated, shadowy system. And, eventually they take risks that are too big because they have to keep chasing profits and chasing yield. Something blows up eventually. And I don't know how they're going to get out of it, because quantitative easing was the main thing. And they've already done a lot of quantitative easing. If they do a lot more, we're looking at inflation like really dangerous. I mean, even as is right now, the target is 2% inflation. We're at 3% inflation in the U.S. So Jerome Powell actually just said, the Fed chair, that a December rate cut is not a done deal. So everybody was thinking that the Fed was going to cut interest rates and make money easier to get, cheaper to get in December. And he's like, well, we got 3% inflation. Do not consider that a done deal. So they're not out of the woods by a long shot. And you see these subprime lender things. And we're just talking about also the buy now, pay later stuff like Klarna. And there's a couple other companies that are literally doing people just buying groceries and shoes and jackets on buy now, pay later stuff and defaulting on it. People are defaulting on their fucking grocery payment. What does that say about where we're at? It's done. This cycle is wrapping up, and I don't know how they're going to get out of it, but there's going to be a lot of, my main focus right now is trying to digest as much as possible about that. Because when 2008 hit, I wasn't following finance at all. So I had no idea what Lehman Brothers even was. This time I'm trying to get ahead of it so that when that happens, I can be ready with messaging about why it happened and why capitalism is just fucking cooked. And if you're thinking that capitalism is cooked, you're right. You need to start learning socialism now. And yeah, a lot of people will lose their jobs. It's going to be really bad. This is the price of letting capitalism run this long, I mean, yeah, people were lied to. They were lied to and they were told, no, capitalism's good. You should support it. Has plenty of gas left in the tank. Everything's good. I mean, they just told you that because they had an interest in running this thing up to the last possible second, So people were lied to. And yeah, maybe people were greedy too. They're like, I can have this life and we don't need socialism and whatever. Capitalism is just not going to last forever. It's just not going to last. That rate of profit falls. The system isn't stable. And the movement for socialism will get louder. The less people believe that there's a future for capitalism. And, when you go through major once-in-a-lifetime economic crises multiple times in your life, you start going, hey, I think this is bullshit. And sadly, Occupy in the U.S., as opposed to how those methods were utilized during the so-called Arab Spring, showed that the powers that be will either wait you out or kick you out. Yeah, Occupy was just starting to formulate demands, but it didn't really get that organized. And then I would see Bernie Sanders as taking a lot of the discussion that happened during Occupy and taking that to a next level. But then he fed it into the Democratic Party. And that was my whole playlist. People listening to this aren't, started listening recently. We have a playlist on the channel titled Socialists Against Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Party. It's 7 or 8 videos we did back in the spring on these topics and how Bernie Sanders really led people into a dead end and how we're never going to get an end to capitalism that way. You're just going to get more bullshit. Basically, you're going to get more people telling you they can reform capitalism. It's really run by people who have a vested interest in seeing the system continue. And that's everything. The inequality, the poverty, the war, all the unnecessary suffering that capitalism causes at home and abroad. they are trying to perpetuate that. Bernie Sanders, unfortunately, is part of that. One of the main sources on this is a Counterpunch article from 2015, which talks about Bernie's secret deal with the Vermont Democratic Party. That's why he never started a party. They would let him run as an independent as long as he never started a party. They wouldn't run a serious challenger against him. And so we go into that. It's been all a scam. He's nominally independent, but he's really been working as a Democrat this whole time. And we'll show you that in that whole playlist. So, but yeah, we have to get independent of all that. Whether it's Graham Platner, whether it's AOC. I mean, have we forgotten the lessons of fucking AOC already? Really? Because we went through all this already. You know, and people are just still biting that hook. You got to move on. But how will we win elections? It's not about winning the goddamn elections. It's about getting organized and building a parallel system, because this whole system is not savable indefinitely. It will end. This system will lose the confidence of the people in this country, and we will need a new system. We need to start building that parallel system today, if for no other reason in the short term, to take care of each other. And then as the existing system dies, it can actually take over and become the new system. And of course, there'll be a struggle between the two systems. Absolutely. Because, you know, they'll be in denial of, no, we can save it. We've got to crush this thread. It's all their fault. You know, obviously there's going to be a struggle. This is the class war. But the point is not to like take over their system. That's the mistake the reformists make. Their system is going down. You're going to go down with that ship. It's futile. Let it go down. Build the thing that's going to take its place, and that will protect us in a way that even the best meaning individuals who make the most promises in the existing system, they can't really protect you. They can't protect you. And I think people are seeing that. The Democrats aren't protecting anybody, really. People feel terrified. They feel abandoned. And yeah, I mean, rightfully so. We need another system that can take care of us both in the short term and become the new system. That's what this is about. It's not about winning elections. The elections are a whole separate, like, tactical question. And we've done videos on that. But that's not the overarching thing here at all. NVIDIA stock value is the whole S&P 500, which is like the top 500 companies, market value from 1995. No problem there, I'm sure. AI companies will never be able to produce the amount of power to do what they're promising. I hear they're already using the same amount of power for their data centers as New York City. The scary part is that won't stop them from trying and ruining the environment in the process. Yeah. There's a video from More Perfect Union, which has problems, is not a communist channel, but they did some investigative reporting on the Bitcoin. I think it's a Bitcoin mining thing. And the deafening noise that it's making in the place where they set it up. It's like as big as a football stadium. And it's just fucking mining Bitcoin. It's like they found a way to be like, how can we waste as much fossil fuel as humanly possible? It's like just taking resources and throwing them down a hole. To make what? AI slop? You're going to waste drinkable water and all this fossil fuel to just make fucking AI slop? But that's what they're doing. Because why? The people at these companies are making so much money in the short term bilking investors. It's all going to dry up eventually, but they don't. What does that matter? If you make $10 billion now, it doesn't matter if your company doesn't exist 2 years from now. You have $10 billion. You're completely set. And what's the cost? Well, that's the environmental cost and, you know, of the power generation and the water use. They use water to cool the computing systems because it's, you know, just like a fan in a computer. It creates heat. I'm needing to kind of wrap up, so I'm getting a little faster through the comments here. I saw the same thing, organizers yelling at the No Kings protest, yelling at people with pro-Palestine and anti-ICE signs. That's not what this is about. That's a response from one of the organizers. It's about no kings. Well, you know, what I said about that was no fascism would be a much better slogan because we already don't have a king. but we do have a lot of fascists. But the Democratic Party will never just do like an anti-fascist rally. They're a fascist collaborating party. So they don't want you really, really thinking about it, because you will figure out in about 2 seconds that they're also fascist. Bush Cheney destroyed the Republican Party, which is why we have Trump. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I would frame it a little bit differently, that the Republican Party squandered their goodwill. They squandered their brand on Bush and Cheney in order to accomplish a far-right goal. Like, they needed to radically reshape the government, and they did burn up their brand in the process, but they did it for the purpose of making the changes that they needed to make. But yes, I agree, they needed to rebrand after that. And so they came out with the Tea Party and Trump, you know, they tested a lot of stuff. Trump stuck. Anyway, also the Republicans haven't won a presidential election since the 80s. They stole them all. Yeah, I mean, there's good evidence for that. Will the Democrats ever do anything about that? No, they work together. They are partners. People need to understand the Democrats and Republicans work together. They will work harder together against you than the Democrats will work like against the Republican Party. Said it many times. Fundamental task of the U.S. left, in addition to rebuilding the labor movement, abandon the Democratic Party. Leave the Democratic Party. They're your class enemy. They're a genocidal imperialist party. That's easier to see now than ever before. And, you know, running a handful of people, like the squad, expanding the squad by 3 people is just not going to do a fucking thing. We need to be thinking a lot bigger than that. When I was talking about there's good evidence of that, I'm talking about 2000 and 2004 specifically. I kind of stopped like anything after that, but yeah, on the elections. Those data centers are such good arguments for why workers' co-ops are a bad idea. We should have democratic control over the whole economy, not democratic control on our individual data center energy sink. I mean, it kind of underscores the problem, which is like, and we've covered this in previous live streams, that workers' co-ops, typically, the cooperative sector is like the crumbs of the capitalist economy. It's things that are not profitable enough for capitalists to care about, which is why they fall under the control of a ragtag bunch of workers, basically. Co-ops just don't get enough resources under their control in the overall capitalist system to have a meaningful impact on what's going on. You need a head-on confrontation with the system as proposed by Marxism-Leninism. Because, yeah, you have, like, a coffee shop. They have, like, a data center the size of Manhattan. Do you see the problem? It's great existing in a vibe-based economy where the federal revenue is lowering rates. Federal Reserve is lowering rates based on no data, and an AI bubble is teaching college students vibe coding so no one will know how anything works. Yeah, vibe coding doesn't really work that well either. There's a lot of videos. If you look at the tech channels, there's AI can write code. Whether it actually reliably works is another question. My DSA chapter took a right-wing turn not too long ago, so I haven't done anything with them since. Sorry to hear that. Imperialism and the Revolution by Hoja, yes, is part of the upcoming 2026, early 2026. Probably doing that in January, February at the latest, but I'll be doing a cluster of things around the China question, which is kind of the dominant question in the communist movement today. Yeah, the Brooks Brothers riot in 2000. If you haven't seen that, look that up. There's, I think, a wiki article on that even. I cannot seem to get to the end of this chat. So some reactionary pseudo-communists saying that immigration is bad and we need to cater to the racists and xenophobes. No, that's absolutely not true. Look up Lenin immigration on the channel. That absolutely is not a Leninist position that immigration is bad. I mean, the ultimate goal of all of this is to create a world Soviet system, basically. A world system of workers' councils. That's the ultimate point here. Stalin himself said that. Bernie Sanders actually came out recently this week with a Trump is doing great on immigration thing. It was like, obviously I don't agree with ICE, but Trump was better than Biden on immigration. What the fuck are you talking about? You don't think undocumented workers are potentially a huge source of support for a movement for socialism? Oh, you're Bernie Sanders. You don't care about socialism. Oh, wow. We're still on the Yud book. Holy shit. I need to scroll down to the Hasan comments. Stop typing. All right, I'm trying to read a lot of comments quickly, but hopefully people got something out of chatting with each other in the chat. I can't. Well, there's 100 people in the chat. This is why I have raids off, by the way. I just don't want the chat turning into a shit show. And I'm not saying it's a shit show. I don't really see trolls or anything. So again, shout out to the mods. But yeah, just even 100 people posting normally in the chat is too much to scroll through. But that is really what I come here for. Is that the one I'm talking about? Yes, panaccindex.info. PANACC index.info. If you want a good speed run of history in the Americas, read Howard Zinn, People's History of the United States. Yeah, there's a few flaws in there, but it's definitely for people who are totally unfamiliar with like more of a left read of history, that is a decent starting point. Oh, okay, finally, we're on to the Hasan stuff. Okay. Hasan got me in the door to this type of stuff, that and Richard Wolff. Yeah, the problem, like I was saying before, you need the Socialism 101 to not be in complete conflict with the stuff in Socialism 102. It's like when you get to third grade, you don't have to fight what they're teaching in the kindergarten class. So that's the problem with our Socialism 101, quote unquote, is it needs to not be wrong. So I'm trying to fill, now with the basic ML study guide done, or, will be done by the time this is posted, moving on to intermediate stuff, and then, then more advanced stuff. Well, you may not be from Maine, so you don't have to worry about Platner specifically, but this could pop up in an area where you can, vote eventually. I mean, it affects everybody because it changes the tenor of the political discussion and what the sort of standards for what's acceptable are. So it does matter. Years of Red Scare discarded in a second. I feel like he's talked before about feds getting involved in leftist radical something. Well, he apparently forgot that. Dear God, has he never read about what the CIA gets up to? He calls stuff CIA all the time. He apparently just didn't find it convenient this time. Well, there you go. So my red flags went off that he was doing that deliberately. So when it's the guy with the Nazi tattoo for him, it's okay, and none of that stuff exists. But he does know it, you're telling me. Okay. I heard the owner of Blackwater had publicly announced his intention to infiltrate leftist groups a few years back. I don't know if Platner is a PSYOP, but doesn't the U.S. government have a history of recruiting military personnel for PSYOPs? Absolutely. And as somebody pointed out, apparently Hasan does know this. He just, again, didn't find it convenient this time. Hasn't he said the feds have gotten over-involved in leftist groups instead of right-wing ones, like with the anti-terrorist stuff, yet he forgets all of that in this context? Sounds bad, Hasan. This sounds bad. But Hasan, has Platner done anything to make up for what he's done to the Afghani and Iraqi people? It's fine if he regrets what he did, but do his actions reflect that regret? I became interested in Marxism-Leninism specifically from hearing how many millions the feds spent studying and trying to distort it. Absolutely. I remember seeing a Hasan clip from a few years ago where he had the gall to call people in his chat rad libs. Well, you're the leader of the band, my friend. When Alyssa Slotkin, former CIA, was voted in, she immediately became isolationist by going after cars made in China. Yeah, by the way, it is insane that we can't buy Chinese cars. I 100% would get one of those like $10,000 like EVs. Oh, that would be, I mean, it would fucking tank the US car market. And you got to understand, like, this country has been run by like car companies and oil companies for so fucking long. I will say that about China, whatever they're doing to like maintain capitalism, that fossil fuel long-standing cabal does not seem to have its hooks in China in the same way. If they sold Chinese EVs here, it'd be just so game-changing. The only reason anybody buys a fucking Tesla is because there's like just not enough competition. China's making, so there's a channel, I don't think it's a great channel, but there's a channel called the Electric Viking. And he does news daily on just anything related to renewables and electric cars and batteries and, just all about anti-fossil fuel stuff. He's an Australian guy. When I look at the Chinese car shit on there, I'm like, give me a Chinese car. I'll pay for it. Just give me the opportunity to buy one. They're so fucking cheap. But no, we have to buy this super expensive shit here because, well, it's We're reading Imperialism now. Take some lessons from that. I'm baffled that Hasan can't imagine this being a reality. I think he has to go out of his way not to read or believe hundreds of books, etc., about this kind of behavior. Literally, Hasan is the Joe Rogan of the left in quotes. Like I said before, what kind of former soldier would fake being a socialist? Maybe some fake kind like National Socialist for political expediency. Has anything like that ever happened in all of history? I don't know, maybe once or twice. Checking into it. He still calls his chat Radlibs. He has not taken a break in 6 years. The average is 2 to 3 days break. The most was one time this year for 4 days, other than being banned. That's not good for anybody, I gotta say. Questions of sincerity aside, that is not good for you. There's a video, like, because even like when you're not online, you're just thinking about it. You know, I have issues. I'll go on, you know, I make a 20-minute video of like an audiobook or whatever. I post it, just even handling the comments afterward. I'm thinking about those comments for like days. You know, if you're giving it serious thought anyway. I mean, it's just like taking a break. After I post the stream up, I'm probably not going to post for a week just to recover, you know, because you get so many comments. It's like you just got to clear your head. There's a video where someone was interviewing people off the street about what they thought of Hasan. Hasan was so upset with anyone who was more left than him, saying he could do better. I mean, it's just such a pattern of people like that finding out. Like, just be a communist, do the reading, be a normal communist who reads. Everything will be okay, you know? Then you're not going to get mad about that. And forget the fucking Democratic Party. Hasan was the lefty in a group of centrists for a long time. That's how he got famous. My jaw's on the floor at this point. Hasan is fully aware of COINTELPRO. I think the best case is that he's lying just to fit his narrative of the moment. Incredible. He's not a big reader of books. This guy has viewers. Why is Hasan assuming the best of Platner? Why not judge him off his actions? That's what I'm saying. These channels are pushing that guy so hard. It does raise questions, for sure. Jesus, how do American leftists defend a war criminal neo-Nazi? Well, most of the left is not. There's like a few really like diehard, dedicated like Bernie people that are, but most people are not. And I would say there's obviously people to the right of the squad that are attacking Platner, but there's a lot of people to the left. It's like this one little narrow strip of center-left people who are like, don't shut down Platner. It's very weird. I mean, I would say suspicious. I just get tired of saying suspicious, but I mean weird in the sense of being suspicious. Hasan is smelling his own farts. The Platner question answers itself just by listening to Platner talk about his service to American imperialism. Just a regular-ass dude. Hasan is a frat boy through and through and nephew of Cenk Uygur. Yeah, it shows. I mean, that Cenk arrogance and the raging out at the audience absolutely comes through. I wouldn't even say Platner regrets his time in the military. He's always bringing it up in a positive way. He doesn't even present himself as an anti-imperialist. Does this guy, Hasan, insult his audience this much? It's kind of shocking, honestly. Yeah. Like Rogan, one of the appeals of Hasan is the huge quantity of it. I bet this is on in the background at a lot of places. Yeah, that's what I was saying before about, like, you just know he's reliably always on, so you can just, like, drop in and get predictable content. It's like the same appeal of McDonald's. Yeah, so people just have it on in the background of their work. I swear I've seen a clip of Hasan reading the COINTELPRO How to Derail a Party handbook, so it is weird to hear this argument coming from him. Yeah, suspicious. No legitimate person on the left prides themselves on their career as an imperialist lapdog, yeah. We can do better than a war criminal Nazi who got an SS tattoo to remember the victims he killed in Fallujah bioweapon gassing. Yeah. The other day I had someone in a comment section compare Hasan to Engels. I've been seeing that for years, and people need to read more Engels if they're going to compare Hasan to Engels. No, they just really do that to justify Hasan's bourgeois spending, like his bourgeois lifestyle flaunting that he does. Well, Engels was rich. I mean, he was a revolutionary communist who contributed directly to some of the most fundamental works of revolutionary communism. Hasan has not done anything like that. Not even close. You do not compare them. Yeah, they both have money. That's where the similarity ends. You know, so does Trump. So does Trump. Hasan is bad. He embraces self-admitted, quote, former Nazis, but bans people critiquing from the left. Yeah. I think we need to assume millionaires like Hasan aren't on our side. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those, like, assume not until proven otherwise kind of thing. He's also unsincere when addressing the Platner issue. He acts as if people hate veterans on virtue of their time in the army. The issue is what any given veteran thinks and their politics. Yeah, Hasan Platner. I don't think Platner is a plant, but we don't know. We don't. I mean, if you can at least admit we don't know, we have some. Then your opinion is just that, your opinion. But Hassan's tendency to minimize what the government actually does will hurt the left, absolutely. And for what? For something that ultimately is not that meaningful in the long run. And that does so much more harm than the potential benefit that it brings or could bring. It makes the left naive about how capitalism maintains itself through surveillance and control. Well said. I'm ashamed to admit that I was a fan of his. Well, you're growing, so that's good. Will I join a polycule? I'm busy. Being a, quote, leftist and defending Hasan is the same thing as being a submissive. I mean, that's what people were saying. It's what he's doing is findom. It's giving people money to be degraded. But somebody with an OnlyFans showed up in the comments and was I would never do something as unethical as yelling at people for not supporting the Democratic Party, even if they paid for it. So, I mean, it is. It's he's degrading people who give him money, almost that's they're getting some pleasure out of that. Trump tearing down the White House. I think he's just out of fucking control, basically. There's actually a really funny thing. If you look closely at the model that he made, the design for the new ballroom, there's stairs that go nowhere and windows facing each other. Probably AI was used to design that, and it's just kind of a batshit design. All right, folks, I've actually been going for 4 hours here, so I gotta get going. Unfortunately, didn't make it to the bottom of the comments, but can't have everything. I am happy so many people were able to make it, including so many first timers. I will take the stream with me. Wow, there's a lot of comments. Scrolling down to copy paste these into a Word document to read if I have some downtime, and see maybe about other topics to bring up. We didn't get into everything I mentioned at the top in detail, but I'm glad I at least mentioned it so that people have that kind of on the brain, and if you want to look up stuff on those topics, that's pretty much what I have right now as far as what I think is some of the most important things. I'm sure I'm missing stuff. Follow me on Blue Sky, socialismforall.bsky.social on that site. If you want to kind of keep up with that's what I do if I have a little time to kill and I just want to just fucking vent or just see what's in the news. That's probably where you'll catch me. I do not use Twitter at all anymore. I got logged out 6 months ago and I just never logged back in. I do not intend to ever go back to Twitter. Blue Sky, like I said, is where I'm most active on social media. Thanks again to the patrons, patreon.com/socialismforall, and the Buy Me a Coffee supporters, buymeacoffee.com/socialismforall. Really appreciate the support because none of this would be happening without it. Really, everyone is awesome. I'm continually amazed at the sustained support, how many people keep showing up. I'll keep doing it if you keep doing it, and we all know the stuff we're talking about here isn't going away. You absolutely are becoming part of the solution by studying up and making a commitment to figure out, even if you don't know yet how to apply it in your community, study it now to the best of your ability, network with who you can online, and take it into your community. Try to create opportunities if you can. But none of this is getting better on its own. It's got to be us and others like us who take an active hand in tearing these problems down and building long-term sustainable stuff to replace it. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.